so that, okay, so that we can put together a resolution and our testimony for the Charter Revision Commission hearing in July. So we'd asked folks, we're gonna do a roll call in minutes, okay? So you want to take us through?
Catherine Freed, Sean Garcia, Nancy Kong, President Michael Lavario, Sherry Ryan, Damaris, Dawn,
Yes.
Ariadna, present, Alistair, Herman, Trevor, Michelle, Molly,
Present.
Campbell,
Here.
Jaylene, Sandra, Steve, Megan, Anisha.
Sherry's no longer. That place now. All right, so, any comments on the minutes? Nothing to do? All right, so I guess we should begin. We, asked our committee members, to give us some comments. But before I go into that, at last month's meeting, we had a presentation that was given to us by, I guess I should give this mic, I can't, by George James, who is a planner, who does a lot of work around the city and a bunch of other community boards. Also, asked, Mr. James to do an analysis. And so he did, and he laid out the areas that we believe there are recommendations coming for amendments that in this, in the November elections. And so, you know, he presented sort of what the issue was and then some things for us to consider. It wasn't very opinion-based, which I thought was good. And I thought it was fair, and it tried to sort of lay out the different benefits or areas of concern that we might want to consider. I'm not sure if folks were able to take a look at the presentation and if you've been able to do any of your own work on finding out or, you know, looking at the Charter Commission recommendations. So there was a few people at the meeting that we had, some folks from the task force and some members of the land use committee, but a lot of people were not present and were not also online. And so, you know, here we are. We've got to still do this, and we'll do the best that we can to be reflective and representative. I want to remind everyone that what we're doing here today is we'll be putting together this resolution, and we'll vote on it. It is a draft. It still has to go before the full board. And so there are, I don't know, 35 other opinions over there. And so we should be ready for that, okay? Catherine, do you want to say anything?
No, I think we went over. Can you?
Can't hear you.
It's on? Okay. No feedback. Yeah, no, Damaris covered most of it. Damaris is covering most of the ULURP items. The items that were not ULURP, that were more just sort of the charter revisions, are the ones that I presented, which include open primaries and even year elections and member deference. So it would probably be helpful if you did have a chance to see last week's or whatever presentation, but I think most of it's kind of self-explanatory. And of course, we can answer any kind of questions that you have for us. So you want to.
All right, so first I want to begin with that we prepared a couple different resolutions. I had a lot of this is not an excuse, but my computer whacked out last night. So I kind of piecemealed this together. And what I did was I created a sort of a template that outlined all the different areas that we need to consider. I did not really include much opinion because I thought that we can discuss that here. And we can decide whether we want to comment, not comment, but everywhere as basically, I believe. And please just be patient with me and give me a little bit of grace because I was kind of working off of a phone and like the old traditional spiral notebook with a pen. Okay, that's real. So, and then I was at the last minute able to put it together. And so this is what we have. So I don't know.
Yeah. So it's really, again, it's really mostly just a template. I did also leave in some of the uh recommendations and comments that were presented or were emailed to me from other members of the committee, the task force, actually. Give me a second. Okay. And so we also did receive some comments online, and I think that's important to note. Some of the committee members sent me notes, and we got one or two comments from independent community members, and we also received some comments from the city council's testimony on the commission. And I'm not sure, I can pass this around if folks want to like take a look at it. You know, I just sort of pieced it together on different pieces of paper so that, because I couldn't really print it out as a lot of copies right now. All right, so we have it on. Okay, I left my glasses like I'm on. No, I have it in front of me. I have it in front of me. Yeah. Yeah, I thought we had, yeah. Can't see it either? Okay. You want to take this or make a copy of it? Okay. All right, so let's do that. Thank you, Susan. Okay. And again, it is really just covering the areas that the commission seeks to, or we believe seeks to make recommendations for amendments in the election that's coming up in November. So it's mostly just the points and not a lot of commentary on my part. But there are some other points within that do have some commentary, or I would say like do take a stronger position. And that is towards the end. And so some of those were related to the areas, Catherine, that your committee was dealing with. Okay? Yeah. So how do we want to do this? Once we make the copies, you want to wait a second? Everybody get not you, Susan, I'm sorry. Everybody get a copy, and then once we all have a copy in front of us, we can go by point, like we did for the City of Yes. Okay? Let's just do that. I'm going to ask folks online to be patient with us while we generate our copies, because yeah, nobody can see that, including me. And so how many attendees do we have on? Okay, I see it there too, right? Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So thank you, Barry. I didn't get copies of the ones that you gave today. I only got copies of the one that Michael sent me, which I'm not sure. I know that it was a general sense of like what a lot of the members of your committee felt, but I don't know that it was official, but it was still, you know, the sentiment, I think. Okay. So yeah, these few minutes. While Susan is making copies and distributing them, yeah, to look at the comments that came through. And I also have a physical paper copy of the presentation that George James gave, if anybody wants to take a quick look at it. Yeah. Okay. All right. And I also want to remind any members of the public that if you want to speak, to please fill out a speaker card. I don't see any here. And just, you all know, everybody here is pretty much a community board member, so. So yeah, just take a couple minutes, take a look at it. I had hoped to get it to folks beforehand, but obviously that was not possible. It was, I know. There's probably all kinds of typos, just we'll fix them. And there's not an opening statement either at this moment, so that's okay too. I guess we can figure that out as well. Luckily, the only thing we have to address today is this. Yes, thank you. So is everybody? Okay. If you see little typos on anything that you think we might want to keep in here, make sure you circle it and you can let us know later. So that we can make those corrections. And if there's anything that's repeated in here, again, like I told you, I was kind of like cutting and pasting and so just and trying to edit as best as I could. We'll give another like 2 minutes, okay? How are we guys doing? You need a couple, another minute? Yeah, okay, sure, take your time, it's okay. And, to the, is there, all right, I guess the folks online are able to see this copy? They're able to see? Okay. Phone, and then in the end, the computer fixed, and I was able to finalize it, but I couldn't use it. But outside of that, I think. Well, yes, well, that's, if you see here, I guess that we could put that here once we get to that part under here, because this is where we talk about it. Should not be altered, and then we can start adding stuff there. Because that's really the issue, right? Sorry. You want to pass back the notes, the comments and stuff? Thank you, Jaylene. Did you go to see them? No. And this is what the members of the committee said. So this is some sort of, these are different issues that are only in production. I get it. We are looking forward to that. Would make sense, policy, make them that way. Yes, those are two. All right, and there, a digital version of this, and maybe I will share with you out there.
Which one?
Other ones, pass out. Yeah, but we're gonna go through one. The people online will want to see what wrong with all of you. And then we'll change, it. We get to one, we'll change the other. They can't read it. Yeah.
Damaris, Richard, would you like me to start? Damaris, which of the three would you like me to start?
I'm not sure.
Open timers? Or do you prefer to just go through the one you shared first and then switch? I have it pulled up.
Well, we can follow. Yeah. As we go up the template of the resolution I have, when we get it to the part that's not really down to the regular one, then we can totally go through.
Yeah, but can we like go through one, get comments and everything, and then go on? So then we'll just skip that one, or whatever, however, if you want to pull stuff together.
And Susan, I only have the open primary and the deference.
Right.
The third.
Being even years. You have the even year.
No, I think Susan's gonna send it to me.
About here?
Okay.
Okay. Okay, so, I think I'm gonna, access, I'm gonna get to your attention now. What the heck is that? Oh, that is pretty, yeah. All right, so I'm gonna ask everybody for their attention now, so that we can get it started. And I guess we can, let's be on a process right now, so that this can be smooth. We'll go one point at a time. And if you have anything, you can do, how, you know, what do you want to say about it? And then, if you don't want to say anything about it, you can say that as well. Okay, let's start here. So.
Want me to start with the first? I'll start from the top. Motion City Charter Revision Commission reports. Whereas Mayor Eric Adams convened the NYC Charter Revision Commission and City Council Speaker Adrian Adams convened the NYC Commission to strengthen local democracy, which are both reviewing the New York City Charter and have each released preliminary reports outlining areas they may explore further as they continue their work. And the second one as well. Yeah, exactly. And whereas both commissions are continuing their review processes with further updates and recommendations expected later this year, and the NYC Charter Revision Commission is explicitly seeking public comment.
We are, this, these two areas, one, yeah, that comes directly from the resolutions and not the audio. So we can change that, we can add it if you wanna suggest something now, or we. Okay, where do you? Okay. Yeah. In anticipation of amendments, hearing on the November ballot.
So actually, just a point there is that if there's a mayoral commission one, it actually preempts something from the. Did they undo that? Okay. Good to hear.
The city council recommendation, right, yeah.
I hadn't seen that signing yet, so,
Well, if that happens, then we have a whole nother set of issues.
right.
Too, right, but All right, so an anticipation of amendments, right?
Yes. Okay, I mean, that second clause, is at present explicitly referring to the mayor's one, so, pending the passage of that legislation, it's kosher until, Hochul signs that, if she does.
So we add, so where would we, so explicitly seeking public comment in anticipation of amendments appearing on the November ballot.
Yep, I think that's fine for now.
Wait. Where do I put the chart on November? Great, you can do that.
It's a PDF, but I'll add comments on a different Word document.
Okay.
Yeah, works for me.
Sure. Whereas the commission has appeared to explain possibility of reforms regarding the land use, elections, and city agencies.
Do you feel like that statement is necessary? Okay.
Whereas the mayor's commission discusses possible changes to fast track the universal land use land use review process or ULURP to reduce costs and facilitate certain types of development.
Anything we want to add or change there? Yes. We don't know that one. For the mayor's commission discussing possibly changing to fast track the universal land use review process either. Right, so maybe you know what they're proposing.
At this point, they are not giving us a draft proposal and saying this is what we're putting on the ballot. What we're looking at is ideas they are considering to put on the ballot. We have no idea if they'll ever appear on the ballot or not. So I would put, the mayor's commission is, well, it says considering, the mayor's commission is considering possible changes that would, trying to say, how would you say that neutrally, fast track? Propose to or aim to,
Possible
fast-
changes that aim to fast track,
yes,
that intent to,
or with the intention, how about with the intention of fast tracking the universal process, reducing costs?
you got that, Adriana?
No, actually, just so you know, there's comments on the Zoom that if we're having side conversations, they only hear one half of it. So let's make sure we're all talking into the mics, because if not, they can't hear the responses
Yeah.
to like Susan, for example.
Got it. Thank you. Is there anything else for this clause that we feel will strengthen it or make it feel more neutral? No, if not, we can move on. Okay.
Whereas the mayor's commission introduces the ideas of different levels of review. Large projects take one path, small projects takes another, which may provide the opportunities for smaller rezonings.
Anything we want to add there? Or change?
It's good to me.
I'll talk really loud.
I could say, again, just to make it more neutral, with the intention of providing opportunities for more smaller rezonings.
So maybe,
where do you want to, so introduces the idea of different levels of review. Large projects take one path, small projects takes another. With the intention. uh, Thank you. Okay, any other changes, comments, additions, edits?
Whereas the MCRC also suggests streamlining the review of categorically beneficial projects like 100% affordable housing, but fails to provide clarity on the criteria for determining what is considered a categorically beneficial project.
So I'm sure we have no comments on that, or do we have comments, please?
My comment would be that one of the things the city lacks in general, which is why it's hard to do citywide things, is they actually fail to have a citywide development plan. One of the few cities in the nation not to actually have a development plan. And the problem is that we constantly do zonings and rezonings instead of actually having a comprehensive plan. So if we actually had a comprehensive plan, that would actually conceivably shorten some of this because it fits in the plan, therefore it gets fast tracked. Whereas as it is right now, it's, and the way the mayor is proposing it, it would just be more power to the mayor, I believe, as opposed to, you know, deciding what gets fast tracked in a sense, rather than having an idea of what the city wants, which could be determined. And that's, I think, you know, we actually need to have a comprehensive plan in the city. Would make a lot more sense. And then we wouldn't have this kind of piecemeal nonsense that's been going on for, I don't know, 100 and something years.
So I just want to point out that on page 2 at the bottom of we have a clause that talks about elevating citywide needs. And wait, is that one it? So yeah, for planning process. So there may be some other area, there's some other areas in here which talk about a comprehensive city plan. So we could put it in this clause or we could save it, but I want, so what else do other folks need to?
Just for like simplicity's sake, I think that we might be better off just beefing up that clause on the second page. I agree that the Charter Revision Commission's language on, you know, the need for and how we would develop a comprehensive plan is a bit scant for my liking. But, you know, as it concerns the categorically beneficial projects, I think that that's something that we would need to include language for, and I support, you know, I'd like to have a citywide plan and categorically beneficial projects, but, you know, if we're only going to get one, I'll support that. Good point.
I just want to, Ariana, I think if you open the PDF with Google Docs, you can be able, you might, it'll work. It'll convert actually nicely, unlike with Microsoft Word. Like if you go to your email, this gave me the option. But no, but it's fine. She can just do it right now and then she can download it as a Word doc. It's not a big deal. I think that'll just be, if we're gonna make substantive changes, I feel like that'll be a lot easier for you and for us to see. Yeah. There we go. The format might not be perfect, but we can see. Thank you so much.
On to the next. Whereas the MCRC introduces a concept of a zoning administrator office as a mechanism to review projects that qualify for fast track treatment. They're small, crucial, and categorically beneficial.
so. These 2 points, I mean, I don't know if we want to put them together. If we think that
How about we just, let me just hear if folks have any thoughts about this last clause on page 1.
And to clarify, Damaris, should this one be deleted and we work on the other one, or are we keeping this clause?
I'm sorry. Well, I think what Campbell was suggesting and was that we probably possibly emphasize the citywide planning process on page 2, maybe. But I'm not sure if they're exactly the same, and I would remove one. I think I would leave it.
Just the whole thing about the zoning administrator.
Well, we were talking, she was asking about this clause.
And the next one.
The last clause on page 2. Because we talked about the comprehensive citywide plan. So Campbell's suggestion was that we might get one, but then we decided, well, wait a minute.
Why not ask for
Right,
both?
why not ask for
Right.
both, right?
Yeah, I think that we leave, as it concerns like the categorically beneficial projects, I think that we say everything that we need to say.
Mhm.
And to John's point about how, we ought to speak more and request to the Charter Revision Commission, speak more about a citywide plan. I think it's best if we do that on the bottom of the second page clause.
Got it. Okay.
So we're past the zoning administrator.
Yeah, so. Catherine wants to speak on that clause.
Well, only that George James had suggested that the zoning administrator, although apparently it's in the charter somewhere that there be one, that we've never really implemented it. And his suggestion was that the zoning administrator could be very helpful, including in things like fast tracking, dealing with smaller items where the zoning administrator could just deal with the number of developers, the people who are pushing the plan. And that would help and also be helpful to developers or people who had a plan who'd never done it before. So that the idea of keeping the zoning administrator and maybe making the office a real office that can help smooth over a lot of the problems with people who are starting the whole development process and smaller items, so it could be less expensive and quicker to get through.
So based on that, I mean, it seems like this part is just naming what the concepts are. So based on what Catherine said, maybe just include which is already incorporated in the charter but has no funding.
Comments about that?
That includes that inclusion? Are we in agreement? Okay. Just repeat it for me. Oh,
All right, next, whereas the MCRC creates a different review procedure for housing developments in districts that fail to meet the fair housing targets. The city will set housing development goals as part of a fair housing effort and a fair housing framework. It will set housing targets by community district.
no comments? Any comments?
I think I know what Susan's going to say, which is something to the effect. Oh, okay. Just to keep our language consistent, should we say instead of creates, proposes the creation of?
This is great because this is exactly what I was hoping you guys would catch, like these, because I was like really just trying to piece it together.
Next. Whereas the MCRC is proposing to amend the roles played within the ULURP process, including the role of the community board and the role of officials like the borough president, the speaker, and the city council.
Anything? No? Okay.
Whereas the CRC is including in its recommendations, consolidating the advisory portion of the ULURP from 90 days to 60 days.
Any comments?
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
They're not talking about which of the, is it, which of the advisory recommendations would be changed? Is this community board and borough president or what? You know, it's not just not.
The
very
roles,
clear.
they talk about all of them,
So they're
actually.
all being changed.
They're
from-
considering all of their roles but we don't know what those changes really are. But we know that based on George James's presentation and what we do know, that the intention is to enhance the role of the borough president and possibly the council speaker and the mayor.
But
Right.
they're saying specifically reducing from 90 days to 60 days. Is that both the community board and the borough president?
I believe that that was in reference to the community board.
So then we should say that.
Yes,
because I think
yes.
what they wanted to do with the borough
Yes, and
president. was make
specifically, yes,
parallel.
that's what it is. It's the community board.
So then we should say that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So how, let's,
Yeah, because I think for the borough president, what they want to do is make it parallel to the community board.
so what's the language that we want to put here? Are you Campbell and Michelle looking up something? Want to come back to it? Okay. Okay.
Yeah, can we come back to it? Because I'm just gonna look up what the actual recommendations are in the preliminary report about who might be
Okay,
you
I
know,
just,
simultaneous or whatever.
I also wanted to mention that some of the community boards have added to this, that especially if they're going to reduce the days for the time that the community board has, that they would ask that they not, and I don't know how they can do this, but I've seen where they have suggested that they not allow the procedure, the ULURP procedure to start before the community boards in like August, because most of the boards are closed in August.
So when did community boards ever get 90 days?
Well, right. But I'm just saying that's one of the things, because we end up, the community board, if we're not meeting during particularly the 60 days, that we won't even get a chance to consider some of the ULURPs. I don't know if we want to do that or not.
Okay. Did you find it, Michelle?
Yep. It
Okay.
says the most common recommendation has been to consolidate the advisory portions of ULURP. That is community board, borough president, and when applicable, borough board into a single review period. This suggestion would preserve an advisory role for the community board and borough president, but could save meaningful time. Today, the community board review period is generally 60 days, and borough president and borough board review add another 30 days. And so consolidation can move it from 90 to 60.
Okay, so this wasn't accurate what was written. They want to do is make a parallel process and change one of the time periods.
I think it would be 60 days total and concurrent is how I'm reading
And
it.
did you say something about 30 days at the end?
Well,
Um,
that's because it's
borough-
60 and the borough board is
Yeah.
30.
Okay,
The borough.
okay.
Community, so it's in total 90 days for the advisory.
That's why you said
process
it's
to happen.
since when? Right.
So
So it
af-
was a general it was the whole process. It wasn't just a statement related to the CB,
Yeah,
to
so
the
it's-
community boards only.
But I think it's very unclear the way it's written.
Yeah,
So
well, yeah, I mean, that's
Ariana, I sent you the language.
that's why we're
Maybe we
here.
just want to put that in there. Yeah,
Yes, that would be great. Thank
great.
you.
thank you.
Next. Whereas the MCRC suggests a new process for the zoning changes related to climate infrastructure and another process for public land ULURPs, one size fits all procedure forces the city to spend scarce time and resources on exceedingly modest changes.
So this is very incomplete and I put it in there because it was a point, but it's one of the ones that I had the least amount of time to even try to flesh out. So we've got to decide as a committee whether or not we want to make changes to this, include it, or or make it more neutral.
Thanks, Susan. So just on the grammatical front, and then we can address the sort of tone. I think we slot in climate infrastructure projects.
Yeah.
And another process for public land disposition
Yes.
as ULURP's one size fits all procedure forces the city to spend. I think that wraps up our grammatical.
Wait. Did you get that, Adriano? Can you?
Sure.
Repeat it.
Whereas the MCRC suggests a new process for zoning changes related to climate and infrastructure projects and another process for public land disposition as ULURP's one-size-fits-all procedure forces the city, et cetera. In terms of the tone of the I mean, for what it's worth, as I mentioned in our last meeting, I think the latter clause of this is, if aggressive, relatively true. The city is forced to spend scarce time and resources on these modest changes. Yeah, that's my opinion.
Okay.
But for this, where we're just stating what they're doing, how about just instead saying, instead of forces, with the intention of allowing the spit, or with the intention of having the city spend less time and resources on exceeding the modest changes. Okay,
All right, next. Whereas there's a recommendation to streamline disposition to activate public land for affordable housing and other uses. City has hundreds of properties that are tiny, inches wide, and dispose of them. The city needs to go through ULURP.
Oh, God, yeah, well, you guys can tear that.
I
sentence
don't
out,
think
'cause
there's
it's
anything
missing
really
grammar
inches
there.
wide. We're talking less than a foot.
Well, I took that language out of Georgia James's. Yes, I did.
There, Queens is universe unto itself, and believe me, there are a number of city tax lots that are actually inches wide. A lot of them are in that funny little area between the sidewalk and the road, you know, that like 1 foot strip of grass. Those were split out in tax lien sales back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And those do exist as city-owned property, which is a total mess. But in terms of language here, whereas there is a recommendation to streamline disposition to activate public land for affordable housing and other uses. The
That's it.
city has hundreds of properties that are tiny, sometimes inches wide,
Mhm.
and to dispose of them, the city must go through the ULURP process. The other thing that we might be interested in including here is a reference to the fact that the city already has alternate disposition processes for public land. I mentioned this in our last meeting, this Department of Small Businesses Services 1301.2F, which is like an alternate ULURP disposition for maritime dependent uses. You know, we might add some clause adding, you know, something to the effect of recognizing that the city already has alternate disposition processes for publicly owned land. Yeah.
Where would you recommend that we insert that? Okay. So it would say, there is a recommendation to streamline disposition to activate public land for affordable housing and other uses. The city has hundreds of properties that are tiny, sometimes inches wide. And to dispose of them, the city must go through ULURP.
Can we put a period in these sentences or in these clauses?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of like typo stuff that we gotta
Mhm.
work out. So, you know, I wouldn't spend so much time on that, but you know, make your corrections so that we can clean it up. Yeah.
I
Unless
mean,
you want to put a period so you could start another sentence. Is that
yeah,
what
I
you're
was
saying?
gonna say like period,
Okay,
next word and comma, recognizing that the city already has special disposition processes such as DSBS's maritime lease provision or procedure that are deployed in service of like other public benefits.
so I have a question. So we're referencing that because
We can nix it. This is a nice to have, not a need to have.
It's a precedent. That's why, okay.
Mhm.
So basically what we're saying is something similar already exists. Let's just make it official.
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah, I
let's
think,
look at it. Right.
I think a
right.
lot of people, you know, saw this clause or like this recommendation and were like, oh my gosh, new ULURP procedure, like breaking apart ULURP, but I think it's a bit heartening or just helps people feel a bit more at ease that this is something we already do. It's not like a revolutionary.
All right. So can
Maybe-
you work on some of that language, Campbell?
Yeah.
All right. So let's,
Why not state that there's a precedent already for alternate, there's a already existing precedent for alternate disposition.
Ariana, will you? So look at what she added. Sometimes inches wide, and to dispose of them, the city must go through ULURP. Recognizing that the city already has a special disposition process such as DSPS's maritime procedures that are deployed for other public benefits.
That's maritime provision. Maritime dependent. That's specifically total context, but when you have like a pier in Brooklyn, for example. Yeah, so some of the like a pier in New York, you would be able to go through DSBS's maritime dependent lease provision because you're berthing boats at that pier. So the city recognizing that those properties should be used for maritime dependent tenants has provided this provision that just like streamlines it so that those public benefits can be realized more readily and more consistently, which is, I think, the goal behind such a procedure for the creation of.
So if what we're looking to do is to show that there's a process that already sets a precedent so that this is not such a significant change, then I might change recognizing that the city already has, and maybe I might put something like, there is already a precedent for such disposition, and then we can reference the maritime provisions. Okay? Okay. Are we good? Okay, that was good. Thank you.
All right. Whereas the MCRC described the idea that certain zoning changes would not have a full ULURP, but would instead go to the zoning administrator office. This new mechanism would replace some land use and Board of Standards and Appeals actions, but the report has no detail on if and how this role would impact community board input on these actions. Would CB still see these applications when the zoning administrator hold hearings?
Yeah, so I put a question in here and it was not clear to me how to sort of phrase this piece because I was really rushing, but go ahead. Yeah, I put that in there because I wanted folks to know that when George made this presentation, those were some of the questions that he posed. And I thought that it was important that we might like either look at that or not. If we decide not to, then we decide not to, but that's why I included it. Because he had put it as a question, so I thought it was worth at least us considering.
Maybe we want to just say that the recommendations don't address whether the CBs would still hear these applications or if the zoning administrator would hold hearings.
Yes, okay. So where, so we would say, you want to give it a shot at where to include that? So basically, the last two sentences, instead of posing them as questions, just say that it's not clear whether we would see whether community boards would continue to see applications and whether a new zoning administrator would hold hearings. Okay,
We're good?
Yep.
Okay.
We're almost done with page 2. I know.
Whereas the MCRC includes language on elevating citywide needs and land use processes, which suggests a city plan. The commission examines imposing fair share housing requirements using models from other jurisdictions such as California, Oregon, and New Jersey. The commission also examines how capital planning processes set out in the charter may need to change to ensure investments in infrastructure, transportation, and neighborhood amenities are made in concert with new housing.
And that neighborhood, right?
Yeah, so I mean,
All right.
I think there's no doubt that they could streamline the process if they actually had a citywide development plan.
Mhm.
That would in and of itself streamline things because we would know what our priorities are and the priorities are fast tracked. So,
I think we could, maybe something like which suggests a citywide plan, but does not explicitly call for one, because that sets us up for, the whereas or therefore be it resolved to, say the
I like
plan
that.
suggests it, but doesn't.
That
call
makes a
for
lot of
it,
sense.
Sets us up to call for it in the therefore be it resolved.
I think that's right. Adriana, you got that?
Reasonable.
So you want to look at that, Campbell? Because I can't see.
But maybe
All of
not,
it. I can see some.
how about does not explicitly call for one?
I also wouldn't, I don't know where to put it in, but I also wouldn't mind putting in props for the 197A for community boards, because again, that would be another way to streamline the process if there was a 197A on record, right? There'd be some things that if it fits within our 197A, we don't really need to spend a lot of time on it because it's basically pre-approved.
I guess I'm a little bit confused because I'm used to 197As being community-wide and not
Yeah.
necessarily citywide.
No, that's what I'm
so-
saying. So maybe it doesn't go there, but I'm wondering where we would want to put
Okay.
something. I would
Probably
like
have
to
to be
see
a-
some.
That's because that's
New
on a
where-
community level,
whereas?
right? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, we need a new whereas for that.
Okay.
But that's a recommendation that I think the city council commission is seeking, but Michelle,
Can you explain to everyone what a 197A is for
yes.
people on the?
A 197A is a comprehensive planning process that engages the community in deciding a number of community-related areas like housing and parks and just everything that you could think of. And it comes up with recommendations for ways to improve it, to address the growing need or whatever challenges are. And the 197A plan is a great tool. So what I would say is that if we're going to make any comments about the 197A plan, which I do support, we have to also couple that with, some sort of linkage to actionable steps because too many 197A plans sit on shelves. Okay, so they become too big and they're not fundable, and so yeah, it's not that I don't support them because I support comprehensive community planning, but it's hard when a 197A process doesn't come with any commitment from the city,
Right.
for resources, funding, and so that's a problem. So if we're going to say anything about it, I would suggest that we say something about that as well, and that it's a process. And also a comprehensive citywide planning process should also come with the resources that we need to do that planning work and some sort of levels of approval, because otherwise, talk about like a process that could like waste all of our time. So we need to incorporate, if we're going to do that, we should also talk about resources, and we should talk about, a process that either, seeks some level of commitment or approval or something to that extent. So we're not barking up the same tree on a citywide level that we tend to bark up when we're doing it on a community level, all with good intentions and rarely ever really actionable.
Just want to add a comment, but not sure if it fits here, like, cause I used to work as a planner in the other country, and what we did there was we have it's like comprehensive plan, and we do a 5-year review and see what we can like taking action in the next 5 year. I don't know if we can suggest that.
So I want to also just bring to folks' attention that the Housing Authority, the New York City Housing Authority has a 1 and a 5-year plan too. And so I think I'm glad that you raised that, because I think there could be distinctions in plans, and I don't know how detailed or, how granular we want to get, but like their plan is a written plan, right? Which talks about policies, et cetera. And anyway, so the point is, they have a 1-year plan that they put together that is part of a larger scale plan, and they're supposed to revisit it each year, have public commentary. But, and that's great. And we could look at, making recommendations that follow that sort of process. But the difference is that it's the Housing Authority's plan that they're pushing forward. And so like, if we're generating community-driven work in any way, how do we ensure that we can be in a process that is, again, actionable and not wasting anybody's time and resources?
I don't know if you want to put in again as a precedent, or, to make things more concrete, that Community Board 3 for years had a 197A task force that ended up creating the Essex Crossing development. It's a very positive thing.
We can. I love that. I think that's a good example of when it works. And in some ways it worked because we had a commitment, right, of resources and will and otherwise. So absent of that, that's when it doesn't. That's a positive example of when it can work. So maybe we can show some of that. Yeah.
To try and bring this home a little
Yes.
bit. So the proposal in the Mayor's Charter Revision Commission, as it concerns 197A, it discusses additional funding for the community boards, and it discusses staffing support from DCP. Both of those are good things. But I think that our frustration is that these 197As get developed in not so much a vacuum, but like in whatever space we want to describe it, where it becomes invisible to city agencies. I think that what we would want to say is that funding and staffing support is good, but there needs to be some process for like buy-in and institutional sort of co-signing from, DCP.
That's what I'm
DOT,
talking
et cetera.
Some sort of partnership commitment, something, right? Like,
And then
Agreed.
the other thing is, as it concerns like the comprehensive plan, I mean, it's not discussed in any concrete, explicit terms in the Mayor's Charter Revision Commission, but I do want to note that I get the impression that the council and the mayor's discussion of like a fair housing framework, the intention of that is to, sort of deliver 60% of a comprehensive plan. And then their discussion of like the fair housing framework determining or being one of the determining factors for how city capital funding is allocated. That gets you to like 80% of what a city comprehensive plan would look like. Growth targets, where that growth is going to happen, and then allocating funding where we're planning for that growth. So, would I love to have something that said New York City comprehensive plan X year? Yes. But I just want to note that like we are asking for something or would be asking for something that to an extent the city council is trying to piece together without using the words New York City comprehensive plan X year. So I don't know how that impacts like the desire for a citywide comprehensive plan, but just wanted to.
do you know how they're referring to it? Like,
The city council has their proposal for the fair housing framework. I think the Mayor's Charter Revision Commission may use the exact same language, if I remember correctly. As it currently exists, the fair housing framework, okay, so the mayor's is a fair share framework, and then the council's is a fair housing framework. I believe that fair housing framework already exists. It was passed last year, something to that effect. But it's toothless at present, and the goal would be
There you go.
in the council's proposal to add teeth to that fair housing framework. So
Okay. So, all right, that, we said a lot right there, so I gotta wrap my, let's get to what we want to add then. Right, I think there's a lot of good information that we just shared. So what do we really want to say in the end? And have we captured a lot of what we said? Do you think you captured that here? No, right? Okay.
how about I try some language here?
You want to do that?
That good?
And then, yeah.
Yeah, whereas the MCRC suggests the allocation of additional funding.
This is another whereas, right?
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
as well as, or, DCP staffing support. Or to support the development of Community Board 197A plans, but does not describe a mechanism by which those plans would be incorporated into, I don't know, planning, like actual concrete action by agencies. I'm not sure how we, actionable, noun, actionable plans from, city agencies.
Community, I believe.
Just Euler passed it. Well, that was during our rezoning, you mean, right?
Yeah, the East
Let's
Village
Pass
rezoning
coalition when we
actually
were
started.
all,
Which
Yeah.
was the same kind of process.
yes.
As the Essex Crossing.
Yeah, well, a real 197, I mean, another one was the Chinatown Working Group and it took forever. And anyway, well, that's a whole
I
nother,
know what happened there.
there are a lot of good things in there, but it's hard to get any traction on any of it.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say that downtown, we did several, and some of them came out of historic districts where we then did a completely 197A zoning plan for everything. But obviously after that, the council member and the board, well, I ended up being the council member, but then, and the board also picked it up and made, ran with it.
All right, so this is good. We're halfway through. I just want to do a time check for us. It's 7:46. Let's see if we can, wrap this up by hopefully 8:15, 8:30. I don't know, I'm being ambitious, but so now the other parts are, we're moving into member deference and other parts, and so that's what's next, actually. Why don't, you want him to read them and then you can leave the comments on them.
Read these or read mine?
Well, on the one that I have those items covered as well. So I have member deference here. And then I have modernizing the map, the map, and then CBDs just includes, all right, and then these other ones were, I think, areas that your committee. So is the community board 3 district needs, and that's includes lack of a, that's just I think a point for. That was from Michael, and I included it there because those were some of his whereases that were different, but we don't have to keep them if they're not saying anything, but if they're saying things that support what we're putting forward, we can keep them. Yeah. Yeah. So that's what's here, so.
Well, so my question was, do we have to read this or do you want to just go to my, most of this is, some of this is incorporated what I wrote.
Yeah.
So why don't we just hold the member deference and do both of them at the same time? And then
Sounds
go forward. The only other ones that most of these,
We'll read through them. Like I said, I included them in case we wanted
yeah.
some of the stats.
Yeah, so why don't we decide if we want to do that? And then when we get to the good government group, say
I
about
like that.
even,
Can I
yeah.
ask a
So
question?
why don't we just not do the ones that deal with even your elections, member deference, or the open primaries, and we'll just do them, those three at the end. And we'll just deal with the other.
Can I ask a question?
When we do
I have a-
that.
I'm confused. Are we passing multiple resolutions or are we gonna pass one resolution? And then we just, yeah, I think because the one that you shared, Damaris has all of the points I thought that we were going to
Yeah.
hit, so,
But Catherine has on some of the points a broader resolution. that's
Right.
Gonna be put up on the screen for you to look at as well.
so are we, Do- so do you think we're gonna take clauses from Catherine's and put them into your main one? Is
I
that
think
what?
we would just read this one first, and then we're just gonna move over to her. I'll say what, the only thing I have left on here is the member deference
Right, and the math
and the map.
and the district needs.
in the district.
So 1, 2, 3, 4.
So district needs to be the last. It's not.
Yeah. Says,
It's just a reference. Yep.
That's why I. them.
I think it's a good one. So
And the good government, yeah, so that's a.
why is it a fault? I think,
it's.
no, I think that's quoted directly from,
Go through first, and then let's get to that. and then we can-
yeah, maybe we can, yeah, I think that would be easier for us to understand because I'm a little confused. If we could just finish the land use part and then turn to the voting part.
Part, now, we go to the other part.
No, but we haven't
I-
finished the land. Sorry, I'm so confused because there's four more clauses about land use. Member deference is a land use thing. And the modernizing the city map is a land use thing. And the district needs are directly from the land use district needs. Okay, so maybe we should go through that. I think that's why I was confused.
But what happened was we were assigned different parts. Right,
At the last meeting.
so the task force was assigned these areas. And this committee was assigned the land use and the procurement process, which is not even on here, okay? Because I couldn't even get to that, okay? But I thought that was gonna be pretty easy, because I
Mhm.
think everybody agrees that the city has to improve their procurement process to pay nonprofits and, other, contractors. So that was easy, so I didn't waste too much time on it. I just chose not to. But, yeah. Did I answer your question? I think I answered your question.
Are we gonna go through the next four clauses before we turn to Catherine's part, I guess is my question. Yeah, I would like to go through them just so we can, thank you.
Michelle says that the next clauses are land use, so she wants to conclude them. And so I.
It's just that why would we go over them
Maybe-
twice when why don't we do both of them at the same
Yeah,
time?
we can do them both at the same time. But we should continue this trajectory here.
So for instance, a number of these are not. You've got the district needs.
Let's just finish this, please.
Huh?
Let's just finish this. Can we never go this year and then look at? Yes, so it's all together. Yes, we can do that. That's what I'm suggesting. Okay.
So we're starting on your member deference and then going to Catherine's? Okay. Whereas the commission identifies member deference as a barrier to development in certain areas and to balancing citywide versus local priorities. Member deference is a city council convention and not a charter mandated process, and there are no specific recommendations for a charter amendment.
And so you'll see the next one under, I highlighted it also because that was. The tradition of member deference in the city council allows members. To block, this was included from Michael's comments, so I wanted to be fair and make sure that I had it here for our reference, so you can read that too, and we can see if.
Whereas the tradition of member deference in the city council allows members to block more needed housing in their districts, especially in wealthier neighborhoods, and the lack of affordable housing is a citywide issue, and every district must do its part to contribute new housing to bring down costs.
So I don't know.
Okay,
I can
if
read
I
it,
could
too.
just make a comment,
I can read it.
if I could just make a comment about the second whereas. I feel while it's true, it's very one-sided and not the experience in this community. And at the last meeting, yes, a council member can block something, but a council member could also gain with member deference a lot more for the community. And the two examples I gave at the last meeting was when Margaret Chin insisted on permanent affordable housing for Essex Crossing. And the other example I gave was when Carlina insisted that the East River Park be constructed in 2 stages instead of 1. So member deference, while this is true, is just one side or one perspective of it. So I don't know what, I didn't read what Catherine wrote, so, but I would suggest that this is not a good paragraph because it's one-sided.
I also would like to add, that there's no reference here or any language that speaks to the other side, which is that the city council members are representing us as a district. And if we take away their voice, then we may take away our voice at the same time. And so I don't know if we have any sort
We
of
should
real
read the other
statistics.
one.
I know, I'm just giving that
Yeah.
opinion. Any real statistics that show that member deference has been, has been a true detriment. So
All right,
go
can
ahead,
I,
Catherine.
can I also add to that? Because I did add some, because I did go over some of this, but you were just talking about 197A plans and getting resources and getting a push to 197A plan. Well, if you have a council member who's willing to go along with that, that goes a long way into pushing a 197A plan. As I mentioned before, I was able to get one through, several through downtown. And we didn't even have them, although we didn't have member deference then, now you have more, but you have to give your council member something to work with. If you totally emasculate them, for lack of a better term, why even have the position? And also, your council member works more closely with the community boards and with the community probably than any other level of government, particularly in the city level. If you want something done, you need to have a good relationship with your council member. And if you do, that council member will be pushing for what the community feels it needs. So I think you can't ignore it. I think you have to say something about it. So can we read what I wrote? If you would read that, please, then we
Sure.
can go from there.
I'll just want you to read the whole thing, basically. Sure. Whereas the Charter Revision Commissions has specifically called out the practice of member deference by the city council. Practice of, I think that's a repeat of what we said in the other one, right? The first paragraph, basically.
I don't know.
Okay, yeah, which is the practice of the city council, allowing a local council member to have final say on any land use proposals that are entirely within that council member's district. And whereas no housing proposal has been approved through ULURP without the support of local council member, and which the commission believes has increased the cost of affordable housing or has prevented the building of affordable housing. And whereas opposing commission belief is a belief allowing such say by a local council member allows real input and some ability to say what happens in the local community by that community and the community board, since local council members are the first layer of government that most communities and community boards have access to and who are more likely to listen to community board than large moneyed and yeah. Whereas the local community and community board is likely to have a better idea about what impact of projects will be and are in a better position to be able to bring attention to defects with plans or suggest alternatives to those plans. Therefore, be resolved that CB3 supports the practice of member deference as a way of allowing real input from an affected community and as a way to be able to reconfigure or have some say in large developments that other ways might ignore community concerns.
Okay, yeah.
Could we take a
Michelle?
straw poll on whether the committee wants to keep member deference, support member deference before we get into the nitty gritty of the language? I think that might be faster.
Whether we want to support it.
Well, this Catherine's resolution says therefore be it resolved this, that CB3 supports the practice of member deference. So I think it would be, well, rather than arguing about the verbiage first, maybe it'd be easier if we take a straw poll on whether what.
May I also make the suggestion that we might want to just say that we support the concept, but maybe not the ultimatum that much more weight be given to the individual council member in any project that's in their area, if that would make it easier, rather than say that they be the ultimate decider. I'm open to whatever the
Well,
committee
I think
feels.
yeah, I think the committee gets to decide. Campbell,
I couldn't hear you, Michelle.
I think we should take a straw poll on whether we want to keep the supporting member deference in this, or if we want to be a little bit more critical of it, because it's not just getting things that you want. Also, it means that you don't get housing like in Harlem when you keep a truck depot. So this isn't just about CB3, this is about the whole city. So I think we should I would like to take a poll so that we can, rather than arguing about verbiage, start from like what people think.
Okay, if people prefer that, but again, there are plenty of areas where individual council members have pushed for affordable housing. So I mean, to make the absolute statement that it will always block affordable housing runs
That's not what
contrary
I'm
to
saying.
actual,
Just,
yeah, go ahead.
Michelle's just suggesting where people, she wants to get a sense of
Straw
what
poll.
general sentiment is. So we know whether to invest a lot of time in this discussion.
Right,
So I'm for it. If you're for it, a quick straw poll.
okay.
Are folks okay with that? Just a
Yep.
quick one, all right? So let's do it. So you want to propose what it is you're asking, Michelle?
Oh, well, I think I just would make a motion, or just I would suggest just keeping what Damaris's template has. That's not yours. Is it?
Okay, hold on. I thought we were gonna first do a straw poll.
Yeah, sorry, I thought you were asking me for a suggestion
No,
for like,
no,
okay. Okay, I would just suggest we run Robin down
Okay.
down the table and
Okay.
say what we're
Does
thinking,
Susan
because it
wanna-
seems to be the first like potentially controversial part of this. So I think that'll be better for.
So wait, we're saying three different things, okay? I just want to make sure we're saying the same thing. Do we want to go around and take comments, or do we want to go around and do a quick straw poll?
Yeah,
Yes, let's discuss it, or yes, we support it, or we don't support it with, changes.
Yeah.
So that's
yeah.
what I'm saying. So
Okay.
how about I just say,
Do you want to ask?
do you
Susan
want to
first?
support, do we as a committee, support member deference? We can just be that basic.
Or oppose it,
Or-
or some.
Well, we can't do, it's one or the other, right? Right? We
Right.
have to do all the motions. So
Or do we want to make some in between decision? Well, let's just do the straw poll. Yeah.
all right.
You want to hear from
You
Susan?
have some,
Does everybody really understand what the member deference is? Because I'm not sure that you can hear, understand. Or does it-
Member-
So we can't take it straw poll. People don't
all right. So, member deference, my understanding and in all the years that I've been doing this is really that when it comes to ULURP and zoning and other, procedures like that, that the council member of the district is sort of the reigning voice, right? So for example, if there was a zoning here and it goes to the city council and our current council member supports it, it is very unlikely, and I think it's only happened once, maybe, in I think the whole time that we've been a city, right? And so if she were to support it, it would be really unlikely that the rest of the council would go against her, right? So it's sort of like they all give each other that sort of courtesy. It is not necessarily a rule. It is like a tradition, right? And they respect each other in that way. Sometimes, there have been moments when other council districts want to weigh in and say different things. And so in those moments that it's not appropriate sometimes it might be, and that's why we've seen member deference in some cases work, right? And I think that some people feel that in other times, member deference has really served to turn the entire, get the support of the council, but that the proposal that's moving forward is not necessarily beneficial to the community, right? And so I think that's sort of what people are weighing.
Okay, so the problem is though that housing is a citywide issue. And so if you give one council member the ability to veto it, then you end up like with like this specifically happens in like you saw a city of yes, that like the council members in single family zoning districts in Queens voted against it because they didn't want like apartment buildings. They talk about character of the neighborhood and we all know what that means. Like, and that's part of the fair housing framework is to make this a citywide issue rather than giving each individual council member veto power. And because it harms our city is my opinion. So, and that is why the revision commission is talking about it.
But Michelle, it only impacts, member deference is only for projects in that specific area.
I very much know what member deference is, but my point is that housing is a city issue. People want to live in New York City. And so if you allow a council member to kill housing in their district consistently, which is what happens in a lot of these districts, we would not have had a Soho NoHo zoning rezoning. We would not have Elizabeth Street Garden if we had the current council member. That is a problem because this is a citywide issue. Seniors who are on senior affordable housing waiting lists are on citywide affordable housing waiting lists. And so if we let one council member kill it for everybody, that is a problem. We're in this terrible position right now. We're on 500,000 units under what we need. That's what we have record like homelessness. Like I'm that.
I want to just, all right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Susan?
I
And then
totally,
Nancy- oh, yeah, go ahead.
so if I can say, there are two sides and I totally understand everything Michelle's saying and the passion for which she's saying it because we're both looking for the same thing. I'm just going to say it works, but it works in more than one way. And there have been times, such as in our community, where it has gained more affordable housing. It is very true. You have some communities that they love low income housing as long as it's not in their community. It's absolutely true. But there's also have been times, and I can think of East Harlem, I can think of in other times in Manhattan, where the boards and the members drew out the process and people were angry at them because they didn't push it through and say, yes, let's do it. But what they were doing was trying to negotiate and fight for more affordable housing, for more units or for more lower income. So it does work in many ways, or both ways. I'm going to say, and it's very true that many communities are very NIMBY, but the reason I'm so passionate about it is because in our community, it has given us great voice to many times get what we need.
Okay. So, Campbell and then Nancy, what, couldn't we do Nancy? Because, oh, okay.
Okay. Go ahead,
Thank
Nick.
you. I appreciate it. I understand both sides, but I'm equally passionate about why I think it's been harmful to the community. And it was because of member deference that we could not get our voices through about the Chinatown jail. And Margaret Chin, she did what she thought was right, but the community was 1,000% against it. And we couldn't make any headway because of member deference. So I also have an equally bad experience with it. So thank you.
Yeah. Who's next?
Sorry, it's more of a question. If you mentioned it's not a rule, it's kind of a cultural.
It's not in the charter. It's just, it's sort of something.
So then how, if it's a cultural thing, how does one change it paper wise? Because you could they can just continue doing it.
Well, short of putting it in the charter, it doesn't. Yeah,
So it's a question for anyone to answer.
right. Yeah, and to answer that, it, short of putting it in the charter, it's really a recommendation.
You would have a, like a secondary entity that would re-review it. And so they could have like like a subsequent adjudication after the council vote. Like, so if it's like something that fits within a plan, like a, not in a zoning administrator, but like something like that. Like basically like you go to like the appellate court and like get like a different response. Like if it like fits within like some, I don't know. Again, the report is so vague at this point. Something like that, yeah. So like a panel that would overrule, yeah, the member deference. That's the way that they would do it, yeah. Should we do this sort of?
Oh, down at the end, want to pass that down?
Yeah, I was just going to mention there was one instance in this community when Antonio Pagan was the council member that he was overruled because he did not want the city through ULURP to transfer mutual housing buildings, the 20 city-owned buildings to Mutual Housing Association. And the whole council voted against him. So it passed through
Yeah, I
ULURP.
should, right. I should point out that this member deference only happened after Peter Valone was no longer speaker. So that's really only in the last, since 2001, 2002, so about the
Okay,
last 20 years.
Oh,
But
just yesterday.
they didn't call a member. There was still kind of the same practice.
Well,
Just.
oh,
Okay, I'm gonna try and bring it home here. I think that this committee board seems to be split on the question of member deference. I think that, to Susan's point, that whereas clause, the second highlighted clause on this sheet, is correct, but it only tells one side of the story. I think that we can loop in one of Catherine's clauses or reword it such that we reflect the other side of the story, which is that there are, certain instances and very clear examples where member deference, from the perspective of this board, delivered real community benefits. And then I think that, to the extent that the revisions in the charter revision are pretty unclear about member deference as at present. And what this board can agree on is that the community board, so much as it is part of this quote unquote problem, is probably the smallest contributor to said problem. I think that we can say something about the board is open to, we care more about preserving the community board's role in the process. And we are open to, and I don't think this is explicit language, but we're open to, seeing what the Charter Revision Commission says about the other parts of the process down the line, because it is a complicated question with benefits and negatives, as we will clearly lay out in the preceding whereas clause.
yeah, maybe we could make it a less vigorous or less controlling vote than member deference, but that nevertheless, there should be a certain greater weight given to the impact of the community boards and the local council member without being an ultimate veto.
Yeah. I think that, there's quite a bit of room for synthesis, in my opinion, between these two. So to the extent that we ought to add, the other side or the clause to describe the other side.
It's partially.
I'm confused which document we're working from.
You see on the screen, I believe it's Catherine's version, right? Is that?
This one is yours now. 'cause
I
we were
can't even see.
discussing it.
Okay.
I can add one of the clauses.
I
for
see it,
Catherine's
okay.
Real quick. just so
Okay,
we have it all in one place.
That
to
would be great.
discuss. This is the one that kind of talks about the benefits. Unless there's
Um,
another one that someone suggests to include.
No, I think that's the one that I would like to work from. I think that's the one that has the majority of the content in there. We just need to rework this a little bit. Does,
That line does.
yeah, I think we just added in,
Could we add the two bottom ones?
I think that we can just address the substance of that in here. We have one clause for, how member deference has negative impacts. And then we have this succeeding clause that describes its benefits. And we say, whereas member deference has, contrary to the commission's report, generated some material benefits, namely including within CB3, benefits to or improvements to the phasing of the East River Park Plan and the inclusion of affordable housing at Essex Crossing. And the community board recognizes those benefits as having been generated from or you get what I mean?
Local council member?
Yes, through the local council member and, and then we loop in the substance of that next clause you have, Catherine, because the council member is close to the. Put all into one clause, all of it.
Yeah, I mean because I think, one of the issues that I have with this is mostly that what I don't want us to do as a community board is to continue to dilute our voices and our role as a community. And I understand that people have a lot of opinions about, whether or not community engagement and participation drags things out or it's unnecessary. I have spent 25 years of my life doing nothing but community engagement. And I'd like to believe that those efforts have led to really impactful and meaningful projects, and that work has brought in billions of dollars into this neighborhood. I could cite it. Okay. And so I just want to make sure that at every turn that we don't take away that option. And one of the things about member deference for me that I always appreciated was the fact that council member had to look at what we wanted as a community. Of course, there's a secondary term, then, and then what do you do then, right? And so that's where the challenges come up. So if we could continue to include what we've been suggesting, but also maybe figure out how to finesse it with some language that speaks to, I think you said it in the last statement, but maybe it could, in the last sentence, maybe it could be a little stronger, right? About, that the member is closest to the community, right? So maybe we could say that the member is representative of the community or is supposed to be representative of the community, right? And that we want to ensure that as we address this, that we do not further dilute or diminish the voice of the voters.
Yeah, and I think that's like the crux of it,
Okay.
I think that we all agree like what we want. It's just a question of how we arrive there. And maybe I'm misreading things, but I think that this committee is open to seeing if the community's voice can be better, expressed if this process is reformed, because I think that we can hopefully agree that there are some elements that are a little
So
bit.
can somebody come up with some suggested language?
So
So I would say that if you reform this process, you're just centralizing all power in the mayor's office. That is a huge problem. And I think you're overlooking that. And that's actually what's been happening in the last 40, 50 years in New York City. And so
I don't know if I understand. I mean, the commission's suggestions are about adding, authority to the borough president's office and the city council speaker. That does not sound like empowering the mayor. if I'm misunderstanding though, please, John.
I hear what you're saying, but it's not even explicit about how it intends to do that, right? And I think that that's part of the problem, that it's a little bit vague about how it intends to enhance
Absolutely.
the role. So for all we know, how they intend to enhance the role may have a very different impact than the mayor deciding this is what we're gonna do.
I completely agree. And I think what I'm trying to like get us to describe and discuss in the resolution is not the specifics, but like the substance. Like we, as a board, want more affordable housing. We don't want to get steamrolled. You know, it's like, we don't know how. I think that what we should be describing is a statement of values.
Well, that's why I'm saying,
So
we already have what you recommended, and then just including some language that talks about the community's representative voice is all I think we need here. So.
based on what's on added, can we suggest edits directly? I combined the two last clauses from yours, Catherine, and
Right.
maybe removed some of the repetitive part. If there's any additional language here, then we can add it directly.
So maybe
Well, I do have, I was just going to suggest that for the therefore be it resolved part, that we may say that community board supports giving additional deference to the local council member as a way to allow real input from the affected community and the community board without giving the council member a veto.
I mean, if we're removing the council member's ability to veto would be like, we're not talking about increasing their power. We're talking about that diluting it, which I don't know.
Unless you don't want to do it, I was just, why don't we do that straw poll?
I confess to being confused. I agree.
Okay.
That John was raising is one, I think, of grave concern. It is of centralizing power. But I think when we balance it out with making sure that the community continues to have a voice and weighs in, and that these decisions should not be centralized, right?
Absolutely.
I think if we can add that language comfortably, I think we'll reach a happy place that'll convey everything that I think we're all saying, which is it's good, it can be bad, it can be beneficial. It's always beneficial when it's done the right way, but let's provide a framework that makes that happen without, disabling our ability as a city to weigh in on projects all over the city that have, a positive impact.
Agreed. Yeah.
Right? That's what you're saying, right?
Exactly. Until we get explicit language, I think that what we're trying to say at the committee is that we care about preserving the ability for us to input, provide input.
And to not diminish any input from the community.
Like considering the member deference process. Because, to your point, John, if the Charter Revision Commission's language that's going to appear on the November ballot says that the mayor gets to approve and disapprove rezonings, then of course I'm going to say no, that's obscene.
Right.
But until we get that, I think that we are value neutral, open to looking at this because we care about increasing affordable housing, et cetera.
Right.
Is that a synthesis?
No, I think that's
Sure.
right.
Okay. Yeah. Susan?
And then we can wrap this.
So operationally, I don't believe we're ever going to get that opportunity. I think they're taking input from us now and then they're putting stuff on the ballot. I don't think it's ever coming back to us. So, which is wrong. It's absolutely wrong that they're not giving us a real proposal to vote on, but sort of a sign of how they act.
All the reason why being explicit as we can be in our comments, I hope that it provides better guidance for them as they draft those amendments.
So are we yay or nay?
I think we're saying, take a straw poll.
Right. That's what I said. Yeah.
Everybody's comment is basically, you want to paraphrase it?
But my brain is like shutting off.
I think that therefore be it resolved, this committee is interested in preserving the ability of the community board to provide input and open to you know, proposals that seek to affect the process of member deference, so long as it doesn't contradict, you know, the first half of that sentence, which is we're open to this so long as it doesn't dilute our own very limited ability to provide input.
Okay.
But, okay,
I don't know, either, but they're coming up with something, so.
okay, so we're taking a straw poll.
Yep, I guess we're taking a straw poll, all right? So all in favor, I mean, aren't you supposed to do this?
So this is in summary what you suggested, Campbell. Let me know if you want me to adapt anything. Yeah.
The limited ability or already limited. Maybe at the, yeah, the first one. Preserving the, yeah.
Say something about.
Doesn't, I would change it to meeting. Because it's a little semantic, but I'm not, you know, like freaking out about the notion of how 60 days would be happening currently. I think that obviously affects our ability, but from my perspective, it doesn't mean that we would. I just would want to, you know, make clear that we're not opposing that necessarily. Because I think that's.
So I added meaningfully here, and then instead of CB3, I put community boards.
So I'm confused because that seems like a final therefore, be it resolved. And it's not referencing that we're talking about member deference, or I can't see it because I can't read.
No, this was just what he
It does say
mentioned
it.
to,
It does say it, never mind. I can't, I'm having a hard time.
like, it's not with, yeah, I can read what it says, but just to state, I didn't put it in the resolution. It's just a
Right.
summary of what
I
he
got you.
mentioned. Therefore, be it resolved, this committee is interested in preserving the limited ability of the community boards to provide input and open to proposals that seek to affect the process of member deference so far as it doesn't meaningfully dilute community boards' ability to provide input.
Then I think we put in the students question already. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Great, we got through that.
The already limited.
Are we good with that? All right, all right, that's the final. So let's do the straw poll real quick so we can move on. All right,
Aye.
Are we just raising hands?
we're at, if we agree on this,
So
As a-
raise
our
your hand
statement.
if you support this statement. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Raise your hand if you oppose. Raise your hand if you oppose. 1. No, 1 abstain.
okay. All right, moving along. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Mark Campbell. The next one is.
And maybe just to bring it back, we did make
Well, we have-
Damaris.
Yeah, we have the commission is recommending changes that.
Damaris,
Yes,
just
honey?
quickly, we
Yes,
did make
sorry.
these edits to this part. Should this be approved as well? Do we still want to combine these clauses from
I can't even read that.
Catherine's?
So,
So it was after the 3 that you had included.
yeah,
Whereas contrary to the commission's report, CB3 has seen benefits to member deference such as Essex Market, and I didn't catch the second, as council members
And
of
East
the,
River Park,
and
the ESCR, right? Was it the E? Okay, just say such as permanently affordable. Okay, just leave it there.
Catherine, would I have you on stage? Yeah, I'd rather just stick with as an example of what the housing district. I think market right now. You know, the two stage.
so should I just include one example
I guess
instead,
we-
or?
We can, I mean, we're talking about whether to be specific or not, so. I would rather err, if it's too long, I don't think it's too long, you could just say, and 2 stages for the E ESCR.
Okay, as council members are the first layer of government that most communities and community boards have access to and who are more likely to listen to community than large moneyed interests. Whereas the local community and community board is likely to have a better idea about what the impact of projects will be and are in a better position to be able to bring attention to defects with plans or suggest alternative to those plans. So these are copy pasted from Catherine's proposed resolution.
And then we would put the therefore at the end, okay? All right, I mean, does anybody have any strong opinions about these 2 clauses, like that we have to like fix something or remove one or? No?
I'm gonna put in the positives about, member deference, you need to put in.
First, whereas. With 3 paragraphs on it.
Yeah, so that's what it is, because that's not, yeah, yep. You see it?
That's the city map.
Yeah, that one has to be moved. Well, this is the same, it's cut and paste into the one resolution draft that we started with. I think is what Adriana did, right? It's just following this, it's been added to here.
I might have just included in the wrong spot, so I flipped the order for
Okay,
clarity.
well, we're gonna have to decide that either way, so. All right, so where are we now? All right, yes.
Whereas the commission is recommending changes of the process for modernizing the city map by centralizing its management from borough presidents to DCP, digitization of the city map and other minor actions.
I think we just have a grammatical thing. By centralizing its management from the borough president's office to DCP, digitizing the city map and other minor actions.
Any other comments? Feedback, questions? Okay.
Whereas consistently community board threes district needs includes the lack of affordable housing is a major challenge for the district and states that unnecessary administrative and bureaucratic roadblocks in the approval process are some of the largest financial costs in building new affordable homes, which often renders desirable projects financially unfeasible.
I have a few grammatical ones there.
For sure.
We need a close quote at the end. Oh, sorry.
Yes, no? Waiting for.
Close quotes, at the end of bring down housing costs, so just before the and. Or sorry, unfeasible, my bad. Was looking at the wrong one. And then the other one is, I totally lost it. Workshop.
Can I just make a few word adjustment? Can I suggest that instead of lack of affordable housing, because we have affordable housing, what I suggested, say includes the need for more affordable housing? Because that really is what our, one of our three most priorities is more affordable housing.
Sounds right.
So where's, are we on the point now? Yep. Yep. Okay.
All right, next. Okay, whereas over time, New York City voter participation has declined. Did I skip something? No.
I just wanted to say this is the open primary piece.
Yep.
That also, right? So we'll handle that the same way. There's what I have on here, which was submitted by, again, Michael. And I just paged it because he said it was a bunch of folks' comments, and then the resolution that Catherine has. Want to read?
Either, I don't care, whatever you want to do. I do.
All right, everybody have a copy of it in front of them? Okay. Just.
Yeah,
Open primaries or the shift to I have the res on shift.
Yes, this is the open. Yeah, you can have.
Oh, here's another one. Charter revision committee open a primary resolution.
Okay.
Okay, I've got it. Okay. So we're just gonna go piece by piece through it. All right.
Sure.
Okay. I wrote this and I went over, I tried to be unbiased. I mentioned what the charter committee has, why it says it's important and talks about additional turnouts and some of the impacts of closed primaries. Do people know what closed primaries are? Okay, I mean, it's in here, but basically closed primaries mean that voters must enroll as members of a political party to vote in that party's primary election. So when you're talking about open primaries, there are a lot of permutations, but essentially it means that either unaffiliated, and in some cases, it could even be members of other parties, can vote and can determine which primaries they want to vote in. So one of the problems with the whole question about talking about open primaries is there are so many different permutations, and the Charter Revision Commission hasn't really given us much direction as to what they favor or how they might work in the city. So I went over some of that, and there are two sides of everything. Some good government groups say that open primaries will be cause higher voter turnout. Then there's a disagreement as to whether it will be better or worse for disenfranchised communities or communities of color, because there are statistics that go either way. So essentially what I did was try and put all of that in here. And my final be it resolved basically says that we take no position at this time, but that we encourage the Charter Commission to continue to evaluate the impacts of the different open primary systems. And especially that they consider the fact that New York City has ranked choice voting, because many of these systems that have adapted open primaries haven't done it with ranked choice voting. And we really have to figure out how the two would mesh. And then I said, be it further resolved that the further assessment of all proposals must specifically be assessed for the impact on minority and marginalized communities to determine if they will comply with the New York Voting Rights Act and to determine if they need pre-clearance by the New York State Attorney General's office. So having said that, you want to read the rest?
Sure. Whereas the Charter Revision Commission has deemed it important to consider several possible changes to the election process in order to increase and improve voter turnout. Whereas the commission is also looking into the impact on voter turnout should the city switch to open primaries. Currently, we have closed primaries, which means voters must be enrolled as members of a political party to vote in that party's primary election. The state of New York also has closed primaries. Whereas New York City has almost 1 million unaffiliated voters who cannot vote in party primaries, and it is posited that opening our primaries may increase voter turnout. And whereas several past charter commissions have considered whether to implement open primaries in various ways to do so, including considering a two-top system where the two top vote getters in the primary election ran for mayor in the general election. However, that proposal was overwhelmingly rejected by NYC voters in 2003. Whereas other possible permutations of open primaries include top 4 candidates, where the top 4 primary candidates compete against each other in general election, allowing any unaffiliated voter to vote in any party's primary, allowing any voter regardless of party affiliation to vote in any party's primary, restricting affiliated voters to only vote in the primary of the party they're affiliated with, or allowing political parties to decide to allow unaffiliated voters to vote in its primary, and also considering if a candidate could indicate their party affiliation on the ballot or not. And whereas the impact of open primaries on voter turnout has been mixed, not only on voter turnout, but also on its impact on traditionally disenfranchised groups like people of color or younger voters. For instance, the NAACP opposed open primaries in 2010. And whereas since the last charter revision, New York City implemented ranked choice voting as a way to reform and increase voter participation, there's no evidence as to the impact of RCV on open primaries or even how it would work. Nor does any city currently have both RCV and open primaries, although Seattle will try it in 2027. But since RCV was voted for by the citizens of New York in 2019, we only had one election with RCV and are in the middle of another RCV election. It makes sense to determine the impact of RCV before we institute a new form of voting. And whereas the open primaries have not necessarily resulted in higher voter turnout, for instance, while the state of California has had a top 2 open primary system for 14 years, while it's increased unaffiliated voting, the overall number of voters not increased. Other venues and other types of elections have had varying results. Therefore, be resolved, the Community Board 3 takes no position this time. I think we went over this part.
Just to encourage the commission to continue to look into the impacts and which system they recommend.
Oh, yeah, I was just gonna say
Yeah,
the same
go
thing
ahead,
because I
Michelle.
can see it on Molly's screen. And then I did have something I wanted to say, but I think we should have public comment first if there is any.
Yeah. Can you?
Hi, everyone. Can I make my public comment now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. My name is Rachel Wilkerson. I'm a Black woman and I live on the Lower East Side. I wanted to talk about the changes to how and when we vote in New York City. I was really surprised to see how much of the conversation during the initial meeting was in favor of having closed primaries in odd years, because maintaining the status quo as we have it is functionally endorsing voter suppression. There's no other way to put it. If we do this, we are all but ensuring that people will keep staying home. It is a fact that New York City elections in odd number years have significantly lower turnout than even year elections. 53% of our registered voters voted in the 2024 presidential election versus just 23% in the 2021 mayoral election. Other cities that have changed to even year elections have seen staggering improvements in turnout, going from 23% of eligible voters to 77%, for example. Voter turnout is especially low in minority communities in New York City. It is the fact that the districts with the lowest turnout in the 2021 primary are made up mostly of people of color. At the other end of the spectrum, 7 of the 10 districts with the highest turnout in the 2021 primary were majority white, and the top 5 highest turnout districts were all majority white. An analysis by the Harvard Law School Election Clinic suggests that the current system of odd year elections, quotes, dilutes the voices of Black and brown voters and young voters in New York, but that even years would, quote, decrease age and racial disparities in political participation, help make local democracy more inclusive, and city government more representative. I know there was some conversation around the idea that people will be too overwhelmed by having more candidates on their ballots, but I really think that doesn't give voters or local organizers enough credit. Again, maintaining the current system when we know how to improve it is tantamount to voter suppression. And at a time when voting rights and democracy are under attack and voters are really disillusioned with government as a whole, I really think it's important to consider what happens if we continue to disenfranchise people who would like to have their voices heard, but like just can't keep going to the polls over and over again. I think this is something this committee should take very seriously. Thank you.
Anybody else? Sure.
Yeah, so I've heard a lot about, changing the elections to coincide with the presidential or federal elections. So but Catherine, I just found what you said was also interesting, that, it is very difficult when there's a lot of stuff on the ballot in a single election and people have to go through it, and, and you have to educate people about it. But I think also, the bottom line is that a lot better job needs to be done in terms of engaging and outreaching to voters. And a lot of the candidates and the parties don't engage with people, with voters enough. They don't go out there and really campaign to the communities. So that's why you often get that, people don't participate, they don't register in parties. So it's, so there's a lot of change and more resources that needs to be put into that. But I don't know if structurally changing something in and of itself will improve that.
By the way, the next resolution also deals with putting everything on even years, so that would also cover that. Go over some of the problems with long ballots and drop-off votes. Yeah, Campbell.
I agree that we can always get better, at doing voter outreach, et cetera. But, I want to remind everyone that we do have the nation's leading campaign public finance program. There's no other city that gives as much on a relative and on an absolute basis, public matching funds to campaigns that run in city elections, even state assembly and state senate elections as well. And, I think that we're already doing the most in terms of contributing funding to these campaigns. And, there's 53 city council elections. And if turnout is bad citywide across all 53 councils, it seems like, there's very little that you can do to differentiate yourself and drive turnout in your district. It's not an individual thing. It seems like a structural thing to me. We've already, done a lot of these, efforts that, would or were supposed to increase turnout in the current system. And we really haven't seen many results, which is why I'm in favor of a structural change.
Yeah, I just want to say I'm totally in favor of what the speaker said. I totally agree. So I would want to make a suggestion that we take the first four clauses from Catherine's and just kind of slap it on top of the clause that in Damaris's draft that starts with whereas over time. Just to take those 4 and then just put it into Damaris's draft between the district needs clause and the voter participation clause. That would be my suggestion, because I just think that the other clauses are maybe a little. So the 4 that Ariadna has on this, and then put it between the district needs clause and the voter participation clause in your draft, Damaris, to add more context to the question at hand. That would be my suggestion. And yeah, and then I would want to see in I would want to say in the therefore be it resolved clause that we support an open primary because I know too many people that are registered as independents and it takes 9 months to change, like you have to do it 9 months ahead of time. It's just completely voter suppression and it's intentional by the vestigial machine structure in this state. So.
I just want to make a comment about the um community engagement, and I don't know if May was suggesting that you add something about it, but I would like to suggest that you might think about it. Because the way it really works, even with the campaign, is that former campaign manager of more than one campaign, what they do in this neighborhood and other neighborhoods is they look at voter turnout and that's where they campaign. And it's like, NYCHA projects, people don't vote there. We don't have to go there. And, you know, I'm not making that up. That's what happens. So I think, you know, some kind of equity and community engagement is needed. How often is voter engagement in different languages? Not anywhere near often enough. So I would just say if you could put in something about community equity and community engagement might drive up voter turnout. I hate open primaries, but I'm not going to talk about it.
Anyone else?
The pen has something to say.
Oh, watch that pen.
Can somebody pass me the mic?
I know we have a lot of knowledge here and in our other work and jobs, we do a lot of this outreach and we have a former elected official, city council member here with us who's chairing the other committee. But I know that in the land use part, we had George Janes come and give a presentation about the land use part of the charter revision proposals. But are we going to get a presentation about the voting proposals, or we're just going with what we know or have?
Yeah, we tried to get people from the council here. My real feeling about this is that there are so many possibilities and possible ways to do that I think it needs more investigation. It can happen. Well, can the open primaries? I know the problem with switching to an even year election can't happen for years because it requires a state constitutional change that requires 2 votes in 2 different years. And it requires a question about the state home rule law. And then it also requires a vote in the city at large. So my feeling with a lot of this, we don't want to say don't do it, but we want to say go ahead and continue to look at what seems to work and evaluate the fact that this is our second ranked choice voting of the city. And from all indications, voter turnout is up. Now that may have something to do with their more interesting candidates more than anything, but you know, it's hard to say, how do we make a decision about either of these now until we see what the impacts of some of those reforms that we just instituted will be, because we may end up being at cross purposes.
Yeah. Go ahead, Colin, you were saying something? Yeah, go ahead. You have a mic? You have a mic?
I was just going to say that both Citizen Union and Common Cause were the 2 of the only good government groups in this state said that having open primaries and moving them to even years would increase voter turnout. So we don't need to speculate. The experts have already weighed in. So can we take a straw poll on this again? So we don't debate it for the next 30 minutes.
We can, but I have some comments that I'd like to make. Which now like escaped me. So I mean, I think you know what? Give me a minute. It's that I had a point and I lost my point. So you know what? you have something to say, go ahead. It'll come back.
Sure,
to me.
yeah. You know, I would like this committee to endorse open primaries and even year elections, but I understand that there are a lot of reservations about the specifics of how those two ideas would be implemented. So, you know, I'd like Damaris obviously for you to speak after me and for the committee to you know, conduct a straw poll. But you know, I think that this committee, you know, as I sort of tried to get at with the land use proposals, like we all want, or at least I think we all want, increased voter turnout and increased voter participation so we can have a more robust democracy. So, you know, let's see what the straw poll says in a moment. But, you know, I think that if we can't arrive at an explicit position on these two concepts, I don't even want to call them proposals, you know, we can, I think, defer, you know, to seek, you know, what the proposals are actually going to substantively look like, and describe how this committee cares about voter participation and the robustness of our democracy. And, you know, we are open to proposals that support those two values.
Right. So I remember now what I was gonna say. Now I forgot again. How about that? That's because I'm tired and I haven't had dinner. And so I was trying to munch like a little mouse on some crackers over here. Now I remember. So, you know, I agree with everyone. And I think that we're all trying to get to a very similar place of increasing voter turnout so that we, you know, can have more robust elections. But I think that the one thing that is missing here, and that I think, and I don't know if maybe that's a reason to move forward with this, but it's just public sentiment about voting in general. Now, why I bring that up is number one, I have worked every election in this community for the last 25 years. All right. That is 1, 2, 3, 4 city council races. Okay. 1, 2, 3 assembly races, a gubernatorial race, mayoral races, you name it. I have been a professional canvasser for the large majority of my time, and my job was to convince people to do the right thing or to vote or whatever you have it. And the one thing that has always presented a challenge for me has been sentiment about whether or not voting makes a difference, whether or not their vote counts. And I have to say that the last couple of presidential elections, at least for New Yorkers, in some ways have left a really, you know, bitter taste in their mouth about even when your entire state comes out, it doesn't matter, right? In some instances, not in all instances. So I agree with that. We want to increase it, but I feel like what we don't do enough of is to change the hearts and the minds of people so that they understand that this is a privilege and their responsibility, right? And make it, you know, of course, as accessible. And that's why I said maybe this will have that impact or some impact of that sort. But it would really make me happy if we could add some language that talks about, like you said, Campbell, we need to look at this and we really need to get to the heart of like what public opinion is. And I think, for example, and maybe follow some campaigns, like right now, there's a current campaign around campaign finance and ranked choice voting. And those ads seem pretty positive. And I think that we're getting, it's hard to tell, right? But I think we don't spend enough time doing that as a city, and we leave that to the independent, candidates and their bodies to turn out the vote. And the city itself doesn't really do that except for mail you a guide. Yes. But the problem with that is that we're still in committee discussion. So I know it's been a long time and people are waiting online and we did? Okay, so then you want to take another, I guess it's the same person. So do we want to continue it's just one, let them.
Yeah, let me get a clarification though, because we only went over and read the open primaries. We didn't go over the even year elections. And there are some real, and just to, one of the, I didn't put it in the resolution, but as May mentioned, I had mentioned at the last meeting, the problems with voter drop off at the end. To me, we haven't determined yet if when we're talking about even year primaries, if they're going to follow the gubernatorial cycle or the presidential. But it seems to me that the more you have a slate, and the longer the slate, the more the actual party or organization controls who runs, and the more difficult it is for anyone who's independent of that party organization to actually get on the ballot, to actually be considered, because you're going to have slates. And I think one of the reasons I think it may not operate to actually open up the process, but may actually close it, is by the kind of control you get with where the big moneyed interest come from, and how much control they have over who's running on the local level. So I think that's something we haven't talked about. As I said, we haven't really talked about the even year election, but again, there are all these unintended consequences that may happen if you're not very careful about how you word it. So I just want to put that out there. What? Sure, let them go. The person online?
Hi, I just wanted to address some of the comments in the room. There's this conversation happening about community input, which you guys spent the first half of the meeting and talking about member deference and saying like, our whole thing is to listen to the communities. I've been sitting here for 2 hours to talk about this. I've done a ton of research. A ton of research exists. This is not an unknown quantity. Like other big cities have done this. We know what will happen. And I feel like to just say we need more community input when this would ultimately be a ballot measure, I believe. So like the public will literally vote on it. But to say you need more community input when like these meetings are so inaccessible, somebody sits through one, comes to share their input, and you just like kind of blow past it like you didn't get any is so demoralizing and kind of the problem. So I'm really asking you to like think about like all of these what ifs and all this speculation, like it's actually been answered by the state, like the city's charter revision commission has so much information on this. It is publicly accessible. They're citing tons of experts. Like we actually do know a lot of outcomes here. I think this is a lot of hand wringing over something that is ultimately like if we don't make a change, things will not get better. We know that they will stay how they are, which is 23% turnout. So they can kind of only go up from there. And even a 10% increase would be a massive improvement. So to not make that change just feels very against the spirit of democracy, but also against what I understood this community board to be about.
Okay, did you identify yourself?
Yeah, am I unmuted? I'm Rachel Wilkerson. I've spoken
Okay.
to a few of these meetings. I've been to more.
All right, I just wanted to make sure that everybody knew who was speaking. And I apologize that you feel put out and that you had to wait. You know, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, in some cases, there is a process and committee deliberates before we take public comments and questions. Sometimes the meetings are short, sometimes they're long. I understand we sit here too, just like you're sitting there. So I'm not trying to make light of it, right? But you know, at the community board, the public does speak first. So that's one area where you don't have to endure the same level of waiting, but thank you for your comments. So we want to.
So what is the straw poll on?
I believe we talked about the open primary.
Right, so we have, yeah.
Went into this.
You mean the open primaries and the even election years
Yeah.
and make them all one?
Well, just the straw poll at the same.
I mean, I think in the end, what we're really going to be looking for are several, therefore be it resolves we support and, you know, so maybe it might make sense to just capture them together. But the question is, do we want all of these whereases? Do we feel that they're necessary at this point? Or do we just want to consolidate them into one whereas?
So we added We added these four to your
Okay.
resolution. These are the ones about the
Remember, I
open
stepped away.
primary. We have not discussed yet or looked at the even year elections yet. But I think the straw poll suggestion was, if I understood correctly, was whether we support open primaries or not. And then from there, we can discuss
Mhm.
the final, therefore be it resolved. So should I call a straw poll on that? Damaris?
I mean, we. Yeah. Huh? Okay, so the assumption is that we don't all agree, right? Is that what you're saying, Michelle? So you're not sure? All right, let's not be out of process because that's not cool, okay? I understand. That's not true, Michelle. I think that we're being really open to what everybody is saying and we're trying to find middle ground. And I think that you can appreciate that because I listen to what you say. So I get that you might be frustrated, but these processes, they take long. Let's not like, come at each other. That's not necessary. I understand that you asked for a straw poll, but you are not chairing this meeting. So you have to, there's two of us and we're trying to figure it out. So I'm asking you for some grace and patience. So, folks, there is a proposal to have a straw poll on, is it on both? On open primaries. And the question, I guess, on the table is whether we support open primaries or whether we don't support them. I guess it's, do we support it and continue to deliberate it? Though I thought we had already come to some kind of language, but that's fine. So let's just do the vote. Do we support open primaries and want to continue to talk about or discuss the therefore clause? Raise your hands if you support them.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Raise your hand if you oppose. Sorry, John, was your hand up? Okay, that's 7. No, John, was your hand in favor or against? Okay, and then those that want more information or not in support, raise your hand.
I don't think that was the question, though. It's just like, are we not in support of open prime? Are we?
Okay, because Catherine wanted it to be who wants more information.
Oh, well, that's not what the proposal was, though.
Okay,
But
so who's in?
we can,
in-
I know,
in
we
it-
can.
Who's against open primaries? 1? Okay. But that's the question right now. So if you're against it, raise your hand. 1, okay. And then 3 abstains or 2 abstains.
I think some of us that are abstaining, it may be because we're not clear yet on what the final proposal is going to be, but we're open to following everybody's lead on the committee and having this discussion with that intent.
So what I pulled up here then is Catherine's therefore be it resolved.
Okay,
We can either start from scratch, modify, but it seems like generally the consensus 7 to 3 is that we're in support of open primaries generally for the B there.
right. So now the discussion is what are we putting in the resolution? Right, which I thought we had some language. So we do have some language.
This is the language from Catherine's resolution. And then the only thing I've done is take the top 4 clauses and added it to
So
yours.
we didn't change anything.
We
You
didn't
didn't add
change
anything. Okay. So you want to sort of.
Correct. So if anybody wants to suggest a therefore be it resolved,
I'm sorry?
it would just be keeping this last one. Is that correct?
I can't see.
So far as we are looking for language on this topic, I like that.
So let me just read it for everyone. Therefore, be it further resolved, the commission should consider recommending the NYC elections be moved to even election years, which we have not discussed, just FYIing that, and that primaries be open to everyone regardless of party affiliation to ensure free and fair elections. This is this is directly from your resolution, Damaris. No adjustment here.
It's not my language. That wasn't my proposal. It was just included in here for us
Oh,
to
okay.
reference.
Then just the standard language we have.
Yeah.
How you open up a primary? Oh, we don't care. We just want to.
I mean, we are dealing with the lack of information. So, I think that I would love to comment on how, but I don't think we're at that stage in the process. I think that, we're opining on the concepts.
Well, I don't understand, Campbell, because I thought that what we said was that we're generally open to looking at ways, including open primaries, to increase voter turnout, but that we also wanted not to let the city absolve itself from additional efforts or to be more clear about what that would really look like so that we are more informed.
I mean, I'm
So
open to.
I'm not saying that open primaries are my thing. I'm just saying that, I'm happy to support initiatives that increase the voter turnout so long as they're real and we have proof and it's everybody's job. May had her hand up too, so.
Well, I was just going to address your suggestion, Damaris, is maybe we do therefore be it further resolved, Community Board 3 supports any efforts to increase voter participation, including the commission recommending, considering, then the rest of it. Therefore, be it further resolved, Community Board 3. You can, I think, Ariana, you can just add it to the existing one. Oh, recommend.
All right, so where are people? May has comments. Can you pass her the mic, please?
Hi, so, I didn't mention this before, but I have had about 35 years of, doing this type of actually electoral outreach. Primarily in a nonpartisan, because I work for a nonprofit organization. So this started in 1990, in the day when we did not even have language assistance at the polls. So I've had many years of experience, but nevertheless, I'm still open to learning more about these open primaries. There are different permutations. There's the open primaries, the jungle primary, there's all this other stuff. So I would say this at full board. So if if there is like a resolution that talks about openness to considering anything that will increase electoral participation, I think that's fine, but we should, the open primary, because we lack information, even if good government groups support it, I know it will be controversial amongst others who work in maybe people of color communities or places like NYCHA, where they have other ideas. So I would suggest, to have a more open, a more generalized kind of, therefore, something like what Catherine said, perhaps, or, that doesn't just go one way. But we should learn about everything that's being proposed. We should always be open to do that. And I am, as someone with, 3.5 decades of experience, I'm still open to learning and hope that all of you are too. That's all I got to say.
Can you grab that mic from her? So where are we now? Okay,
So I
So
added
is this
these,
our final clause here? One of our finals, therefore be it resolves?
none of the even year has been addressed. These 4 clauses about open primaries have been added. We have not gone through the even years draft yet. Are we okay with adding these 4 clauses and this amendment to the be it further resolved?
I'm sorry, what was that?
So are we okay with this modified language for the last be it further resolved, as well as the addition of those 4 clauses from Catherine's resolution on open primaries?
Okay.
Okay, so should I share my screen on even year elections, the draft resolution, or should we just discuss based on what's here?
I mean,
Like, should we go through the main one first and then go through Catherine's, or?
well, there's, on mine, there's really, it's not a lot of substance, but I don't even, oh, here it is, at the bottom. Whereas good government groups say that moving New York City elections to even years would increase voter participation and allow younger voters and voters of color, especially Latino communities, to be better represented in high turnout, even elections. So, yeah, so that's what, Michael Lavario had recommended in the resolution that he sent to me. It's not necessarily my position. It's just what I'm presenting. Did you have something that you wanted to say? Okay, you can still say it before we begin.
Thank you. I think it was I just wanted to double check because I didn't know how much in that resolution for therefore be it in the free and fair elections. I don't know how much equity is implied in that because I know you'd mentioned that in terms of engagement. So I don't know if that was something that needed to have its own whereas, or if you wanted to bake it into the free, fair and like with equitable, like voter outreach. Like,
I mean,
I
I'm
was just
fine
like,
with
I
that.
didn't
I
know
mean, I
whether
don't
that
know
was
where
in
other
somewhere.
people are. But I had assumed, but because I can't fully see everything on there. But I don't know how folks feel about us adding that. Any objections? Okay, equitable engagement. So it's not saying no, it's just saying also, which maybe speaks to what I spoke about, which is like the city has to other people, voter engagement, we talk about it, we talk about voter turnout, but it's really largely left up to us to do. The people, the public. It's not like, the city or in any government agency really facilitates our ability to do this. So Campbell, please.
So, to try and put that into words, maybe on that last clause, and I can slow up for a second, Ariadna. Okay. Including the commission's recommendation. Below, point. Including the commission's recommendation, and then here at the bottom, and should further consider other proposals outside of the scope of the CMMC, whatever the heck it's called, that support free or whatever, what's the verb I want? Support further equitable participation in New York City elections.
That's good enough for me. Thank you. Okay. Takes a village. Yes.
As far as the shifting
Further
to even-
support additional proposals. Essentially, I'm trying to say, like, because we're asking for something that's outside of the scope of what they're recommending. So we just sort of want to like layer it on top. Not contemplate, and then at the end here, not contemplated by MCR. Am I getting the acronym right?
Okay, so I'll just read it one more time, beginning to end for that last clause. Therefore, be it further resolved, the commission should consider any proposal that might increase voter turnout and participation, including the commission's recommendation that NYC elections be moved to even election years and that primaries be open to everyone regardless of party affiliation to ensure free and fair elections, and should support additional proposals for equitable participation in NYC elections not contemplated by MCRC.
Okay. Can I just suggest that on the even year elections, you add the first 5 paragraphs, at least of the resolution that I had suggested? Because that covers a lot of the things that the commission has looked at and the impacts of switching, which they think might work or if you switch to even years.
Yeah.
Yeah, whereas the Charter Revision Commissions has deemed it important to consider several possible changes to the election process in order to increase and improve voter turnout. Whereas one possible change would be shifting city elections from odd years to even years, which would guarantee the statewide election, the citywide elections would occur at the same times. Additionally, would also allow citywide elections to be held at the same time as presidential elections. Whereas studies have shown that voter participation is increased when citywide elections are held at the same time as other elections, that voter turnout is higher in traditionally marginalized electorates, including voters of color, whereas holding citywide elections in the same time as statewide elections could save as much as $42 million every 2 years. We said 5, right? Whereas holding the city elections in the even years could help eliminate special elections to fill vacated seats, where candidates could be forced to indicate which seat they chose to contest rather than holding on their current seat, and should they win a new position, then cause a special election to fill their former position.
And I don't know if you want to add this to it, because it was possible to do, like, it's gonna be every year.
But at this point in time, we don't know the gap. We don't know. So, you know, I think it'd be perfectly fine.
I also added, in the be further resolved, that we recommend that that they look at the impacts of switching to the elections, that they must, continue study, those, and the fact that there are, the commission does have to look into how best to implement this, that.
Whereas, or I guess that's kind of getting into, therefore be it resolved, but you know, maybe something to the effect of, whereas at this time, you know, and I'm paraphrasing here, the proposal is half baked, and it is critical that the commission thoroughly consider how this is such that the benefits previously just described above actually accrue to the public. Therefore, or whereas the commission should thoroughly consider how best to implement this shift to even year elections,
Impact the winner candidates and flooded ballots and likely voters and the impact we got.
yeah, I would, that sounds fine. I'd just preface it with like considering the potential concern or something to that effect. You know, and then what?
Is that something that has actually been like talked about or addressed, or is that just pure speculation? Because for about crowded ballots, fatigue, I mean, the whole point of doing these elections at the same time is so that people don't have voter fatigue because they don't have to turn out every, like in random years to vote. So I don't want to put anything in here that's just speculation that doesn't have any factual basis or concern from actual voting experts and elections experts. I mean, for years, people thought that, you know, it would be really important to make sure that voters were really informed and that they really needed to show their commitment to voting by taking tests or paying polls. And I worry that we are veering into that by giving the voters such little credit that they can't read a ballot with 15 different people on it. So I don't support adding that at all. And I think we should ask the committee before we would add something like that.
I don't know if this addresses that point at all, but I know there is, you know, you see a lot of voter drop off as they go down. So I know that people are often likely not to vote for everyone. They start at the top and you do not go all the way down. And there are a lot of statistics on that. But it occurs to me that, first of all, we're not speaking about voters, we're speaking about people who don't vote. So we don't know why. And what we're doing is having a lot of people, and I'm talking about the good government groups and everyone, we have a lot of people who vote saying why people who don't vote instead of the people who don't vote saying why. And I think part of a great deal of reason why people don't vote that I hear, it's totally anecdotal, is because they don't feel their vote counts. They don't feel anyone listens to them. And there are a lot of reasons besides what year and all of that kind of stuff where people don't vote. I mean, I hear daily, one of the reasons I thought of was just reading complaints that I got. And I make all these complaints that tickets are closed. Nobody listens to me. No one does anything. I think that's a lot of reason for people not voting.
You know, is anybody else waiting? Can I? Well, I'd like us to consider also what consolidating all the elections into even years, the potential impact that it could have on allowing access for other people to run. So for example, if everybody is running at the same time, then everybody is competing and everybody's trying to raise money and everybody's looking for volunteers and everybody needs to run a whole operation. And, you know, that means that we have this new, you know, ranked choice voting system, but there's, you know, a lot of us may want to support a lot of candidates, but in 1 year, we might not be able to do that. We may not have, you know, the resources to do that. So that's the one, you know, part of this that concerns me, which is that while we're trying to increase voter turnout, we might actually, in some ways, hurt accessibility to voting, which I think for the first time, you know, whether our opinion is that we like the quality of candidates or not, we've seen a surge of local people taking and throwing their hat in the ring. Sometimes, you know, it makes me crazy too, but I still think that, you know, that's the point of democracy. That's all I have to say about that.
Anyone else? Okay,
Maybe
so where
just
are we?
quickly, we did have a question from a member of the public on just
Okay,
who Susan is. And I just want to clarify, that's not a member of the public. It's the district manager of CB3. But if there's any additional comments from the public, it's, if you want to raise your hand, the chair can also call on you as well.
are there any hands? I don't see any.
No, there were no hands. There's just this question of whether public, members of the public could continue
No, I
discussing.
meant if there were any other hands now, but I didn't see one, so.
Yes, if there are any further questions, please feel free to raise your hands.
So where are we as it concerns the language? Because I believe we have one whereas clause to square away before we bring this on home. Am
I think that's where we are. The one that says that there are complications that they have to look at.
I am, as I mentioned, open to including that so long as we can find a credible source that describes those challenges and provide that source in the same way that we cite the benefits that are described.
I think these were actually, some of these were actually raised in the charter.
We have the precise language and the citation. You know, I think it's
So just so we're all on the same page, the yellow is what is under discussion right now, the draft. Yeah, sorry. So it's halfway, but it's whereas the commission should thoroughly consider how best to implement the shift to even year elections, considering the numerous impacts of, and right now we're just waiting for a citation on those.
That's not saying no.
Yeah. No, I think that we find whatever challenges the Charter Revision Commission addressed. And we say that you mentioned these challenges yourselves. Here's your citation. And we just want to make sure that, you know, you grapple with these challenges that you yourself have identified.
Obviously, they have to put away to think about. That's what we're looking for. You can't. But in some ways that people can understand it, but it's very complicated. People are going to turn it off if they do.
So what would be, I'm sorry.
Well, no, I was just gonna say that the phenomenon of drop off happens in every election. And anyone who has watched elections, as you go down, the longer the ballot, the more drop off you have at the end. And at the end is the city elections. You're gonna have more drop off in the election that may actually impact us more than the complicated.
I completely agree. I would hope that our often, sometimes periodically shambolic Board of Elections would not put the mayoral election on the bottom of the second page. You know, hopefully they stick the judges down there that no one votes for anyway. But
It's just not the judges. It doesn't include judges because they're off every year. And it doesn't include, I think, DAs. Because they have given them different areas of the Constitution.
So basically, that there will still be additional elections.
Change it constitutional.
So, I mean, okay, wait, Nancy has her hand up.
Sorry. If we can wrap it up, I agree with Campbell. If we can find the citation, otherwise, if it's anecdotal, I would prefer if we didn't include it. And
I'm not, Nancy, can you explain what you think is anecdotal? Because I'm missing that right now. I know, but I know what anecdotal means. I mean, oh, I see.
Catherine suggested to include this section here, but we're just
Okay.
waiting to see
Yeah.
the evidence for it before
Right.
adding it to the end of this sentence.
Drop off, it's not just anecdotal, and every look at election results knows that it happened.
as we are saying, Nancy and I are saying, we're open to including that so long as we include the citation. We agree far more than we disagree.
I don't know, I'm looking for it
I mean, I just want to point out that every area of this resolution where we have made recommendations does not include, or we did not set that sort of policy that we needed to have the citation for it. So, I mean, if you think that it's really material, Campbell, I think to say that voter turnout, you know, that some of it is,
And-
I mean, can we paraphrase that in a way that encompasses what we're saying, but doesn't necessarily contradict, right? Or doesn't lie, right? I can't, you know, at this, what are we gonna do? Look for the citation?
I don't need a citation to tell me that voter ballot drop off
Right.
happens. I was talking about the rest of it because there's a lot in that second, what.
Oh, yeah, that's what I'm saying. I was just
Yep,
talking about voter
that
drop
is-
off.
If we're gonna, you know.
Right, he's talking about cluttered ballot, the impacts of likely voter fatigue and the likely, so not the drop off part, but the other parts of it are mostly, so I think, you know, what we can just say, voter drop off because that encompasses everything, right?
Yep.
So I think we can say that,
Mhm.
right? That encompasses everything.
So I'm just gonna put voter drop off. That's it.
Yeah, right? Is that, okay. So is everybody else okay? Are we good? Cause it's getting really late, y'all. But we still not setting any records because of. Oh, okay. Right. So, all right. So where are we now? Yeah, but we're good now. So you don't have to,
Okay,
where are we
so-
at now?
So, I added the sections on, improving voter turnout. I am adding this, therefore be it further resolved that we just, oh, sorry, this is whereas, so I'll add this up here. So this is what we just discussed. I think that's it for the even years. So we added the 5 first clauses from Catherine's, this new additional clause that we just discussed. And the be it further resolved is already captured in the original.
All right. So that means we have now covered open primaries. We covered even year elections. And we covered member deference. What we have not covered is the city's procurement process. So that's a simple one. Like I said, I didn't include any language for it in here. So I don't know how folks, if somebody wants to suggest something, what we're looking for is a therefore be it, or whereas the city, you know, I think we want to talk about like, the contracting, delays in the contracting process, delays in the payment process, numerous, not systems, procedures, right? And, digital tools, but it's really like portals, that create lots of confusion and cause a lot of delays. And so we are in favor of the city streamlining this process to expedite it and make it much easier for us to finalize our contracts and draw down on our money. Okay, is that pretty much it?
Yeah.
We can, somebody take a crack at taking that and smoothing it out, smith it.
I can say something. I do just want to point out, I can show you where it's in the report where it specifically says, so you don't think I'm making these things up. The commission may also consider the extent to which moving local elections to even years leads to more complex ballots and voter fatigue and confusion. And a number of the good government groups pull this out as one of the areas where it's a problem.
All right, so I
Never
guess
had
we're
this
gonna include it, right? Are we okay? Are we gonna include, all right. All right, so Adriana, you working on this little procurement process clause or
Yes,
somebody else
so
working
we
on it for
have-
me?
We have whereas delays in contracting and payment process. Numerous procedures and digital tools that create, and digital tools create confusion and delays, therefore be it further resolved, the commission should streamline the nonprofit procurement.
Yeah, we gotta
I
put
don't know.
something in the beginning that
Yeah.
gives us better reference to what we're saying.
Whereas the city relies on nonprofit service providers to fulfill its stated mission and deliver public services expected by the public.
Oh, I have it here. Crazy.
Next, whereas the city has consistently struggled to fulfill its own contractual obligations to these nonprofits, including delays in contract execution, contract registration, and the delivery of payments. And maybe we add like, and crucially, the delivery of payments.
Since I can't see what you have there, did we, the language that I got here from Oren, remember when he gave us some of the language, which cites what it is that they're addressing? And I don't know if you include that there. It's like the city frequently fails to pay its nonprofit service providers on time, creating uncertainty, financial hardship, and distrust. I guess this, I'm not sure if this is coming out of the language from the report itself too, so maybe somebody could look at that. And then they specifically talk about reducing backlogs of health and human service agencies. Return of, well, I don't have this. I mean, unless you have it from Oren. And I might have forwarded to you in the email that I sent to everyone. So maybe you might be able to paraphrase that and we can use that. Okay, good. There you go, see.
Needing to financial hardship on the part of these nonprofits and in turn, a decreased ability of these nonprofits to deliver the services that they have been contracted to deliver.
I like that. That's good.
And then as it concerns and therefore be it resolved, therefore be it resolved, the city should, or the commission, I guess it's the commission should,
Should streamline.
this, or this, therefore be it resolved, this committee, as in us, Community Board 3, supports the committees or the commission's efforts to streamline the payment processes, including the I guess passport is it's a responsibility determination exercise.
Yeah.
So efforts to streamline the payment process, including how
about we could just say like the contracting portals,
yes, yeah.
the city contracting portals. Cause they're all different. This year it's passport, next year it might be like, it might be called Visa.
Including the contracting portals to enable the city to meet its own obligations to nonprofit service providers, because this is about us support. I mean, we're kind of already required to do it. We just
don't.
So, you know, to the extent that we can, well, we already are mandated. The issue is that we just, to support the city's, to support the city,
efforts to improve this process, which is what we're really saying, or to
I think we want to say meet its own obligations.
Obligations, yeah.
Because these are obligations we already have. We just.
Perfect, okay.
To support the city.
All right. So we still have one more therefore be it resolved. that we have to come up with. And that is for the first 2 pages. We say nothing. We cite the recommendations, but we do not say where we land on in terms of supporting them. And they're all the first 2 ones. So we. Mm-mm.
I think there's this one here. Is that not?
Which one? I can't see it.
The first one, therefore, be it resolved, New York City has a housing crisis and needs new tools to unlock housing in communities that don't produce enough, particularly tools for projects that include affordable housing, including giving borough presidents more of a role and not allowing sites picked for housing to be moved to different community district. But community board timelines and participation should not be altered if ULURP is to be changed.
So do folks
I don't know,
feel
still
like
agree with
that
that.
last be therefore be it resolved sort of covers page 1 and 2 of the template, the draft template that I provide which talks about all the land use stuff. Yeah. What was that?
I think that this is a pretty good representation, but like Campbell might have some little nits. Jaylene, what do you think?
Thanks. I just want to know about, do we want to say included giving borough presidents more of a role? Well, right, but since we know that this is being suggested by the mayor's office and part of the idea is to lessen the roles of city councils, do we even want to mention borough presidents and just talk about the improving the city as a whole and the whole process?
I would be more in favor of that. I think that the whereas clause.
I would be more in favor of that. I think the whereas clauses break out what a lot of the concerns are. And so I would be in favor, yes, of removing that because we don't specifically also address member deference in that particular one, or I mean, that's not really member, but I guess it's sort of like for land use too. So and those 2 things are linked. So I think that the committee is in favor of, looking at all of these, taking these recommendations with the intent that we hope with the intent to improve, right? And our processes. So that therefore clause to me would, I guess if somebody wants to make it stronger or if they think something is missing, but I would take out that part too.
It's that part highlighted in gray to remove.
Yes, I would take it out because I feel like we're not, that's a very specific recommendation. Whereas I feel like the rest of what we're really saying is, these are the issues you've laid out. These are the issues we're looking at. We agree with you that you have to look at them and that you have to create a process to improve them based on your recommendations. But I mean, I don't know if I feel like the borough president's role should be improved or not, right? But I'm open to looking at, all the testimony and seeing what ultimately they come up with. So that's what I'd say. Campbell, you had something to say?
I do, but they're like linguistic edits. It feels like this is like a substantive question that I think we ought to consider as a board before I have myself.
Okay.
So, I mean, I for one happy and fine leaving that in. I think that, the borough presidents don't have much to do already. We're talking about taking away their maps. We might as well give them something to do. But I don't want to start proposing linguistic edits that the board may or might not.
Say like after growth.
I mean, for what it's worth, part of my line edits would be to add a few other things that we consider and have generally positive disposition to, you know, I think that.
Yeah, it feels weird just to have the
Yeah, no,
borough
I-
president singled out because that's
Yep.
very de minimis in the whole conversation.
Yep. No,
They never said, right? But-
I was, so I guess I had to get myself a little. All detailed sort of what I had been thinking about this. My thought had been to make a slight change, particularly tools for projects that include affordable housing, such as expanding the role of the borough president, introducing an office of the zoning administrator. You know, the other things that we've had a generally positive disposition to, because I agree, Damaris, we either, you know, list a whole bunch of things, so it indicates that we're open to a bunch of things, or we say mum and we say, you know, particularly tools for projects that include affordable housing. And this entire section gets next and we just move on. I mean, I like being specific, but you know, if the board is interested in being a little more simple and getting home early.
Wouldn't you also want to include preserving community? It's in there already? Sorry. Yeah, it's hard to see from here this time.
Wait,
Yes, we did, because we added it.
but I'm sorry, I totally ignorant about the borough president thing. What would they be doing and how would that be impacted by community boards? You know, what new powers would they have and how would that add or take away from community board voices? And I'm particularly concerned because there have been cases even directly related to housing in which board members were not reappointed because they didn't vote the way the borough president wanted them to vote. And, you know, I think that gets very politicized. It's been more than one instance of that. And there have been instances recently. It's just becomes a very political thing. And I have no idea from this what we're talking about.
Wants to say something?
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
I think we could say that.
So I first of all support keeping this in, but saying such as including giving borough presidents more of a role in the land use process at the end of, because they have a whole planning department. We don't.
So far as I understand, the idea would be that the borough president currently is an advisory role, right? Like their opinion is legalistically worth as much as ours. Well, from a legal, it's a very low bar, but like you know, we've seen time and again, council members or the city council overrule a borough president in the same way that the city council overrules the community board. They do it without a second thought. You know, I as far as I understand the Charter Revision Commission, it's to give them a statutory, you know, role such that like they would have they would either have or contribute to a binding vote on that decision in a way that they don't now. They give an opinion, but it's purely advisory. So
One of the other things they're doing is saying that the borough president's role in ULURPs should be parallel to community boards, which is taking away community board voice. Because right now, the borough president has to wait till we vote and then they have to listen to us. They don't have to do what we say, but they must listen to us. So they're taking away that whole community board voice by having the borough president weigh in at the same time. And then they're giving him more weight to that role that we no longer have voice in. And it just doesn't sound to me like it's well thought out in terms of giving voice to the community.
Yeah. I would have to say, I really don't support anything that's going to decrease our voice because it's already so de minimis that decreasing it more, we'd be silent.
Any other comments? Mike?
I think I'm getting lost here is where the tools for affordable housing, isn't that more of like a financial incentive more so than providing more like whatever role to somebody else? So there is from a developer standpoint, there's no incentive for them to build more affordable housing because it just costs them more. So I don't know how much that is taking into effect in this resolution here, because you can like switch power from one person to the other, but in the end, it's not changing a developer's stance on their ability to build something affordable.
That's true. Are you looking for, or you just?
No, I just like, I don't, so, I don't know how much like repackaging what one person is responsible for over the other is going to change a developer's mind in terms of like the bottom line for them to build affordable housing. So I don't know where. So I don't, yeah, exactly. So I don't know if a borough president can say like they are given a tax abatement or what like their power is in doing that.
I mean, the only thing I can imagine that their enhanced role could be is to say no to the project, and because they can't offer, or they can negotiate, themselves to a yes, which is, I think, the idea. But I think that's the role that we all play at all the stages. And so I'm with John. I'm not in favor of, diluting our already diluted voice. I don't understand what is happening, because for me, we should be in a place where we are trying to truly think about all the ways that we can empower ourselves as voters, as residents of this city who understand our needs. And instead, I keep feeling like what we're talking about increasingly is taking away our power and our voice, which we fought so long to even get to this place. And it's a real step backwards. And so I'm not against efficiency. I'm not against the production of affordable housing, but I am against thinking that everything is a one size fits all blanket and that we should give away our power and that other people can make those decisions better than we can.
I would suggest if this area in gray is what's holding up this final resolution, we have a lot of whereases with a lot of descriptors of what we believe that we've agreed on. If we remove this and keep a community board timelines and participation should not be altered, if ULURP is to be changed, does that capture what most people want as one of our final, therefore be it resolves, or is there something else that needs to be added? So it seems like this one part in gray is what's
could we at least keep the and not allowing sites picked for housing or allowing that is a direct reference to what the government is trying to do right now. After that, and not allowing sites picked for housing to a different community district.
You're saying to keep that part, right?
I would like to keep that part.
Yeah, so it would be the gray that we remove.
I'm not opposed to that if we can create something about equity and people's fair share. Because I want to say that oftentimes what will happen is that they will concentrate a lot of these projects in the same communities, and those communities can be then starved for resources and all other kinds of stuff. So housing is important, but we have a responsibility to make sure that we are not displacing all of our low-income people to the outer skirts of the boroughs, because that's where it's less unsightly to see us. And that is real. Can somebody wordsmith some, I mean, I don't know if we
So-
agree to.
So it'd be removing this. Therefore, be it resolved, New York City has a housing crisis and needs new tools to unlock housing in communities that don't produce enough, particularly tools for projects that include affordable housing. and not allowing sites picked for housing to be inequitably moved to a different community district. Introducing the role of an I would remove that. But community board timelines and participation should not be altered if ULURP is to be changed.
Yeah, I also make a suggestion that when we talk about allowing housing sites not to be inequitably moved, or that would increase displacement. Adding that, yeah.
I mean, can we see it? Like, I mean, I can cite a lot of, you know, oh, you know, there's all this and yeah, so, yeah, okay. So unless we have any objections that people want to further discuss, then I think this wraps and I think captures most of everything that was in page 1 and 2, right? Yes, please.
I think the wording's a little awkward right now.
Well, we got to clean it up, right? Where's that? Yes, I like that. I don't have a problem with that. I think that's true. I think that's the point of what we're arguing here, right?
I think we should focus on this section more because this one we've already approved.
Yeah, please.
Like, we care that the housing is built with the community district where it's set. Like, the site physically isn't gonna move, it's the development.
Well, oh, and where it's needed.
So, not allowing sites to go to projects. Sure, housing developments to be, inequitably changed. The different community districts. And then, I think that this final clause is sort of redundant with what we have here. So I would, propose mixing this and putting it there. Just because, we're at it.
And can I add that if we're talking about New York City has a housing crisis, we need to move to, housing and use that there. That's somewhere that you need to on housing and there and not, and not, what facility is city council?
I don't know if it works right there because it's in communities that don't produce enough, so. Okay, so New York City has a housing crisis and needs new tools to not encourage displacement and include affordable. And
To prevent displacement while unlocking housing. Do we agree that this last clause is redundant? And then we can just have it taken care of by.
Herman has his hand up.
We have to know, are we finished before we get to the questions? And did you say to say that there's no other areas in the covenant that clear complete resolve for those use and housing issues and that we've done and like I said, we resolved in the government, the elections, but basically repeating the subdivision before we take a final. Now to do that, we can take that from something so you can go. All right.
I think they lowered their hand. Yeah, Herman, if you want to speak, you can unmute yourself.
what I want to say, and I've been listening all night. And I just want to say I've been doing community developments since this mid-70s. And if there wasn't, I mean, preferences are for that is given between city council person might have only raised its head when some people remember. But as much as I remember, the Lower East Side would not be what it is without preferences between city council people. ULURP, the Lower East Side particularly, and the Bronx that I work in Upper Manhattan, if it wasn't for ULURP, most affordable housing would never been built in the Lower East Side, Bronx and Lower Manhattan. The reason for that is that we did not have, as individual people and people who reside in this neighborhood, the power to make things happen, or even to have the city of New York listen to us if it wasn't for city council people. And the thing that our neighborhoods of the Bronx mostly and the Lower East Side, if our representative did not have the gumption to stand up, Lower East Side would have been sold off if we didn't have ULURP under Mayor Giuliani. So the fact is that, and the community, the resolve of the community itself to stand up, to give the power to our city council person to advocate on our behalf. The Lower East Side and only became something that people with money wanted to invest and live only because the communities stand up, and ULURP was the thing that prevents most of our land to be sold off to the highest bidder. So, those things are the things, if you want to change it, member differences worked for us. The people who lived there in units in the Lower East Side where the toilets were in the hallway and your kitchen was your bathroom and so people have to understand that when they are talking about diluting member difference, it wouldn't have worked for us and we wouldn't have been here, because I personally was told that we would move from the Lower East Side, sell the properties, and we were ending up in Flower Rockaway, which I personally didn't know where that was at the time. Okay. And I spent my life doing affordable housing and still doing that, only because those things helped us to be able to make all these condos that we're having now and everything else, because they had the money. We had to depend on city resources, and we had to fight for that too. And our community board, all the time, we feel that we needed more power in the process than just what we have, which means we only recommend and hope somebody listen to us. You know, so I'm listening to all of what people are saying, and if we didn't have those preferences, most of us in the Lower East Side would not be living here at this point. And I just want to say that.
Thank you, Herman. So, huh? Major changes. Thank you. And thank you for all of your hard work and leadership, okay? Over the years. So are we done with editing? Yeah, okay, yeah, okay, so I guess we have to take a formal vote, on this, so we should, do people feel the need for us to read this 15-page resolution? Okay, so then since we don't, this is an official vote. Ariana, take us through it.
So, should I do a roll call or just a straw poll or?
All right, so I'll just say, listen, I want to tell you all that this is always challenging. You know, we have to think on our feet. We all have things to do. We all have to work on this at home and when we get here and make adjustments. So I truly do appreciate everyone's participation and everyone's open mind. You know, I think when we try to create space of understanding, I think we come up with much better products, which is a testament to community engagement, right? And so with that being said, I do want to say, you know, that for me, a lot of this is largely about, you know, there's a lot of stuff here, limiting input or changing the way things happen at ULURP. And then, you know, on the flip side, talking about, you know, increasing our ability to vote and have voice. And so, you know, I want to remind us that we are people of privilege. Do not make a mistake about that. When you are sitting at this table, you have knowledge, you have experience, you have time. And that is something that a lot of people in our community do not have. And the only thing that they have is the little bit of time and voice that they give when they are participating. And so as community board members or as residents of this community and who has historically fought for land and housing and been at the forefront of much, I just want to remind us that when we are here, we have a really important charge. And I get it. This stuff is timely and costly and nobody wants to really deal with it. And thank goodness for the few of us that, you know, have the gumption and the stamina and the ability to weather and be here. But let us not forget all the people who can't. And so I just hope that as we continue to move forward, we always move forward in the spirit of remembering that we must never, ever, ever agree to limit our voice. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
So first, just a vote on the proposed amendment. Raise your hands in favor. Okay, all in favor. Then I'll go ahead and do roll call. Catherine, Sean, Nancy, Michael, Damaris, John, Ariadna here, Alistair, Herman, Trevor, Michelle, Molly, Campbell, Jaylene, Sandra, Steve, Megan, Anisha, and Herman has his hand up. Okay, roll call is
Vote
done.
at the full
so-
board, yeah. All right, so thank you, everyone. I'll see you at Tuesday at full board. We should try to be ready for lots of questions.